We've completed our recess, and we're now on application 224-16, Nautilus Botanicals, EJVI LLC and 1308 East Main Street. Special permit and coastal site plan review. Applicant seeking approval to operate a hybrid cannabis retail facility servicing both medical patients and adult use consumers. Property is located within the CN zone. Again, my apologies to the people who've been waiting to speak on this. As you see, we never know how long things will take. Applications will take here. Before we go to the public board, do you have any questions? I see Attorney Brayman is here. Board, any questions for Attorney Brayman?
Nothing for me.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I do want to get to the continued public comment, but I thought it might be helpful for the public and for the board to go over the very few things that we've updated since the last hearing in the project.
Yeah, please do that.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, staff, and members of the public. My name is Leonard Brayman. I'm with the law firm of Wofsy Rose and Queskin and Kuryansky here in Stamford. We represent the applicants Nautilus Botanicals, EJP1 LLC, and 1308 East Main Street LLC. The contract purchaser and the owner of the property at 1308 East Main Street. And with me on screen, I see is Connie DeBover, the representative of Nautilus. Other members of our team are available as well. Since the last hearing, we've made a change to the site plan, a modest one. If you wanted to let me share my screen, I can show that, and that is on the public website as well. We heard you, Mr. Chair, and your comment about green space in the front. So we added planted landscaped area designed by
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, of course. Mr. Tom Ryder designed this, and we have two proposed street trees, honey locust here and here. It's going to be native wildflowers, existing arborvitae shrubs, which we would plant. And the honey locust trees. Of course, if the board decides that one or both of the trees is not desirable, then we would have to pay the fee in lieu. We would be willing to do that. So that takes care of the planting in the front. That was the change. We also resolved since the last hearing all of TTP's comments. TTP, Traffic Transportation Parking, who you heard from earlier this evening in a very thorough presentation, approved of our latest site plan, including the planting area, and found our traffic study to be acceptable. They also confirmed that the sidewalk along our frontage was recently replaced and does not need to be redone as part of this project, which is one of their roles under the zoning regulations to make that recommendation or determination. We got an email today from the fire marshal confirming no comments on our application. We also resolved engineering's comments. In a letter dated May 16th, engineering requested certain materials be submitted, which we provided, which are on the public website and in the record. Topographic survey, an updated flood certification letter, and a stormwater statement that was sealed. They also asked that prior to building permit issuance, we demonstrate stormwater improvements that would meet section 2.4 of the Stamford Drainage Manual, since we have an existing parking lot with more than 6 spaces that we're simply restriping. So that's the minimum requirement in the Drainage Manual. And that's consistent with the recommendations of Environmental Protection Bureau, DEEP, and your own Land Use Bureau staff, as well as the chairman's comments during the last hearing, that some stormwater improvements be imposed as a condition of obtaining a building permit. In the interest of providing more information and demonstrating the benefits of our proposed project, we went above and beyond that. We actually submitted a drainage report and a drainage plan that demonstrates conclusively that we will meet section 2.4 of the Stamford Drainage Manual with respect to stormwater improvements. And I would like to call up our engineer, Kurt Lowenstein, if I could. to just very briefly walk through that drainage plan.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yes,
And I can,
Let me get from here.
if you could promote him to a panelist,
Sure.
Mr. Latour. And I can pull up the drainage plan here on my screen, but Mr. Lowenstein may also want to share his own screen if he chooses. This will be a huge improvement to the site that we're making versus existing conditions, because obviously there's a large parking lot here, a lot of impervious surface, and currently no stormwater management whatsoever. So we will be improving upon that greatly.
All right. Thank you very much. For the record, Kurt Lowenstein. I'm a licensed professional engineer in Connecticut with Land Tech. Our office is located on Riverside Avenue in Westport. As Lenny said, since we last were in front of you, we've made some stormwater design changes to the plan, which is what you can see in front of you here. We did go out and do some soil testing within the bounds of the existing parking lot there, indicated by DTH1 and DTH2 on the drainage plan. As requested by the Stamford Engineering Bureau, we did provide treatment for all of the existing impervious surfaces on the site in accordance with section 2.4. The fact that we're reducing the overall impervious area, as I think Lenny mentioned on our last hearing, that in and of itself is an improvement from a peak rate, even though it's not necessarily a requirement for our design. But in addition to treating the stormwater runoff from both a suspended solids perspective, water quality enhancement, and also a thermal cooling benefit. This area now, as most of you can tell, is almost 100% impervious. So when stormwater does land on that hot asphalt, it goes directly into the Norotan River. So this system utilizes a stone trench drain essentially along the entire exposed edge of the existing parking lot between us and the Norotan River. The stormwater runoff will flow across the parking lot, be captured within the stone trench, and then routed into the new infiltration system indicated on the plan there. As I said, it's consistent with section 2.4, and it meets the requests from the Engineering Bureau for our application. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lowenstein.
Okay, board, any questions for Mr. Lowenstein? Okay.
Nothing.
Attorney Brayman, what else?
Well, let's hear from the public, Mr. Chair.
You ready? Okay. Let's go to the public. Anyone who wishes to speak on this application, either for it or against it, please raise your hand. And when you're called on, please give us your name and your address. And that would include which town you live in.
First, we have Mr. Barry Michelson.
Okay, and one last thing, folks, please keep it to 3 minutes. Vanita will let you know when you're at 2.5.
Also, Mr. Chairman, can I ask Mr. Lowenstein to stop sharing so we can see the speakers on the screen?
I can stop sharing with you.
All right, so we have Mr. Michelson
Yes,
first.
My hand was up. I had already spoken on this one. My hand was up because I wanted to respond to the false allegations that Mr. Blessing stated in the personal attack.
Barry, we're on
I
this
understand. It
application
was
now,
up from
and
before. I'm just telling you
Hey.
why my hand was up.
Okay, but Barry, we want to hear from the public who's been waiting to speak on this.
Yeah, but you don't want to hear Mr. Blessing's lies and inconsistent truths.
Okay, but we are going to hear from the public on this one. So, Barry, thank you, and I suggest you write Mr. Blessing an email if you'd like to respond to him. Who's next?
We have Mr. Kun Wong.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, my name is Quinn Wan. I'm a resident living on 13 Brookside Drive in Darien. So I moved here about 2 years ago, and I love this neighborhood, love this area, very beautiful, very nice people. And I would like to make two quick points here. Number one, from last public hearing, Mr. Lenny Braitman made that there is wooded area in the parking lot facing north, and there is enough like buffer and with no impact on the public or residential area at all. So I would say that this is really not true and absolutely not true is because we're living across the Northern River and we can see crystal clear the parking lot and the property. All right. So even if it's a full wooded area buffer, it's only for a couple of months throughout the year, like in the summer or early fall. And the rest of the year, you can see the property crystal clear. I can actually see the property and parking lot from my kid's bedroom, which means that if anyone is smoking pot in the parking lot, my kids are watching them like all the time. Think about it. My kids are like 3 years old and 5 years old. And if they're watching this from such a young age, I just couldn't imagine what kind of impact it's gonna make on them. All right. So that's number one. So I feel like the picture that was shown in the last presentation was kind of like misleading, or at least not with full transparency to the public and to the board. So that's number one. Number two, we have tons of kids living on the street and living in nearby streets. All right. And there is also bus stop and there are nearby schools. And you just couldn't say that this business will be opened far from the law defined area, because the kids are only accepting the education at school. Kids are also accepting educations at home. So you just couldn't put a business like this in such a heavy resident area. All right. So that's my point number two. So I was so surprised and happily surprised that almost everybody from the last presentation was against this. And I know that there was one woman who is a cancer survivor who is supporting.
Mr. Wang, you have 30 seconds.
Sure, but I was very interested to check out the background, and I kindly asked the board to check the background as well to make sure the validation of the qualification of the public speakers are really being validated to be able to express their opinions, because I found some very interesting stuff. All right. So lastly, I would like to ask the board to make sure that everybody can speak up about this matter, just because of the moving around of the schedules. All right. That's everything I want to say. Thank you, everybody.
Good, thank you.
Next, we have Mr. John Ward.
Good evening. My name is John Ward. I did speak a couple of weeks ago. I'm at 32 Beach Drive in Darien. On Holly Pond, I've lived here for 40 plus years. And I'm against this proposal. You know, as I think you guys are, or certainly everyone there is well aware, we have the Fine Federal Dispensary, which is essentially 3 miles from my road. We have Curaleaf on 814 East Main Street, which is essentially 1.5 miles from where I am. So again, it's my understanding that as you on the board there are looking at a special permit regulation, that essentially there's 5 criteria that have to be met here. It certainly looks to me out of those 5 that I look at a number of them. First of all, the reading is operations shall not be injurious to the neighborhood and shall be in harmony with the neighborhood. There's nothing what we're proposing here that's consistent at all with what's going on in that surrounding neighborhood. Secondly, I think we have the issue, which we discussed in depth last go around, regarding traffic and the resulting traffic patterns. Again, in the regulations, at least in the special permit regulations, as I understand them, traffic patterns must allow for adequate passing on existing streets. You know, currently, as referred to earlier in the earlier presentation on another topic, actually, we know traffic in this area in particular, but in Stamford in general, is an absolute nightmare, and it's a significant safety issue. That, I think, is something that we have to give very, very serious consideration to. And then I think finally, on the issue of the extent to which this proposal impacts the nature of the surrounding area, which is, again, my understanding that is one of the criteria that has to be met. There's nothing consistent with this proposal that that works with the surrounding area in terms of the harmony and livelihood of the environment that's been on this Stamford Holly Pond border. There's no
So
question.
what, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. There's no question in my mind that the potential for serious detriment to the property values in the area is very large here and has to be considered very carefully. So I'm against this proposal, very much against this proposal. And then I hope, again, I appreciate your time in working on this, and I hope that you'll reject it. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Next, we have Mr. William McDaniel.
Mr. McDaniel, you're on. If you can introduce yourself and give us your address, please, for the record. Okay, why don't
I'll
we
go to the next
continue
one.
and
Yep.
come back to Mr. McDaniel?
Yes. Next, we have Mr. Benyu Zhang.
Hi, this is Wen Yu. I reside at 27 Anthony Lane in Darien, which is within 500 feet from the establishment. Thank you very much for the chance to speak. I would like to bring up a few pretty significant concerns related to the dispensary. First is the fact that the location is in the middle of a residential street. My 2-year-old son and his friends frequently walk from Brookside Drive to feed dogs and learn to scooter in the parking lot of Giovanni's. And we often see other toddlers and kids from Darien and Stamford around. And we believe that the opening of a cannabis dispensary will really disrupt the daily activities of families. And second, the traffic pattern is extremely busy around the intersection. When we bring our son and my daughter to try to cross the street, we often have a very difficult time and have to wait for 5 minutes before we are able to cross. There has been a few cases of traffic accidents as well since we moved here in 2019. I have learned that the traffic study is conducted during winter recess, and we strongly request an updated traffic study to account for regular traffic patterns and recognize the existing challenges for the community without, the future dispensary, which will introduce more cars and traffic from I-95. Additionally, there are many establishments catering to kids in this area. There's actually a 5-star daycare called Just About Kids, just 375 feet from the current Boatyard restaurant. And if you Google it, you can see many great reviews, and my friends have been using it as well for their kids and have many kids coming by per day. And I also want to highlight that what June, the other resident, has mentioned, Alison Krongard, the only speaker who was supportive of the establishment, in fact, owns a THC, CBD, and smoking accessories brand called Her Highness. And additionally, based on her LinkedIn and public property records, she actually lives in New Canaan rather than in Stamford. So I'm not sure if she's, either she is trying to deceive the board, but there is at least potential of conflict of interest.
Ms. Zhang, you have 30 seconds.
I also
please
don't think
please talk
consents.
the application and not about the other people who had
Sure,
spoken.
yes. But I do believe that just speaking with the community, other women and neighbors in the community, none of them is supportive, including others who have suffered from illness and have used cannabis for medical uses. They do not welcome the dispensary. And we believe that there are other options only 2 minutes away. So it doesn't take away opportunities for people to access marijuana safely. And we just believe that the establishment is better suited for a location that's more commercial rather than in the depths of the
You're at
residential
3 minutes
neighborhood.
now.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
thank you very much.
Mr.
I-
McDaniel,
But before you get there, we have, I've got 25 people on the list here who wish to speak. If you spoke last time, we heard you. Speaking again will not change the outcome here. We take into account each opinion, so giving it to us twice doesn't make a difference. So please have some consideration for your fellow residents who wish to speak, and if you've already spoken, there's no need to speak again. Thank you.
next we have the phone number ending in 6485.
Wait,
Did we hear?
what happened, Mr. McDaniel?
He said his mic is working now.
Oh, okay. So let's go to him. Mr. McDaniel, could you speak now?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Bill McDaniel. I live at 27 Brookside Drive in Darien, Connecticut. I'm a retired police officer. I served 20 years in the NYPD, and I moved out of New York when a lot of these cannabis distributors were popping up all over the place, and there's definitely an impact. I don't care what the lawyers and these businesses say, there's always an impact when you move close to a community. And Brookside Drive alone, that one block right next to it, within walking distance of 2 minutes, there's 25 to 30 kids on this block alone. And my kids are 7 and 8. And I would just really, I'm totally against having this close to children. We protect our schools with the zoning. I don't know why the zoning doesn't buffer adjoining communities and take into consideration how many children and stuff live there. I think this company has been very disingenuous with their presentation and showing the pictures of which I don't know if they're doctored or AI generated, but they do not show all the housing that is right there on the street. And you could see directly into this property with no problem. I know in the summer with the leaves and the trees, it does give a little bit of a buffer, but it's really not what it shows in these pictures. And on top of that, with the traffic, I'm concerned with cars pulling out of there, the bicycle rides. I mean, that is a direct crossing to go to Wheat Beach. Me and my girls go that way all the time. So with the extra traffic, and I'd be a little afraid of going over there to check out the wildlife in the river and stuff like that if such a establishment was going to be there. I try to protect my kids. I brought them away from a lot of chaos going on in New York, and I brought them to a safer area. And I hope that the zoning board tries to keep it safe for not only their community, but the adjoining communities and to the kids that live within those boundaries. The disingenuous approach of this business and the lawyers and saying that they're improving is almost laughable. This shed is falling down because it's flooded so many times. The painting that they have to do is because the flooding. It's all on a very sloped property.
30 seconds.
So of course you're going to have things. The property owner is just leaving this for the next owner. So, he doesn't want to fix it. He's leaving it for the next guy. So whatever improvements they're doing is because it's a necessity. It's not because they're doing us a favor. And I just want you to take everything into consideration. I know a lot of my neighbors are very against this, and we're trying to protect our families and our kids and try to keep the area safe. Right now, it's very dangerous coming out of Brookside Drive onto Post Road at times, and this will just increase to that problem. And I think the traffic needs to be looked at again, and doing it when the kids are out of school was very an ingenious approach to it.
Mr. McDaniel, you're at 3 minutes.
Okay,
Thank you very
Thank you for your
much.
time, and thank you for your consideration.
Good, thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Brent Roberts.
Hi, this is actually Julia Roberts. I live on 15 Anthony Lane in Darien, which is nearby the dispensary, right next to Brookside. I'm against the special permit application. It should not be granted because the nature and intensity of the proposed site is injurious to the neighborhood. Immediately adjacent to the dispensary is Brookside Drive. It's a neighborhood with kids riding bikes and neighbors walking dogs and spending time in their backyards. I think the artificial lighting is going to impact our peaceful enjoyment of our properties, as will the additional traffic and the people probably using cannabis products in the nearby park and street, as was discussed at the last meeting, that's been happening in other dispensaries, and it's problematic. And you were talking about what would they do with the guards and when would the guard be doing the last shift. And I'm just very concerned that this is going to be a problem that's going to overflow into our neighborhood. And lastly, I think the board really needs to consider that the adjacent neighborhood, and my neighborhood, which includes Brookside and Anthony Lane, is just a stone's throw from the dispensary. It's not a commercial area on this side of the river. And it seems like that's not being included in this discussion. And so we're very concerned about our property values going down and very concerned about our being able to enjoy the properties that we own. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. James Calver.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm James Calver. My family and I have lived on Weed Avenue for 28 years, and I am against the proposed location. My opposition relates to traffic, safety, peaceful enjoyment of the surrounding areas. These issues are in Stamford Zoning Regulations 19C for special permits. We have more than 1,100 signatures from a neighborhood petition against this. These issues do not stop at the Stamford-Darien border. They don't respect city-town borders. They are concerned for our neighborhood as a community. In my letters to the zoning board today and on May 6, I've provided significant evidence and analysis for each of 9 areas of concern. 1, additional forecasted volume of traffic, 73,000 cars a year per Mitch Barukowicz's public comments on April 23. 2, the alarming magnitude of crash traffic accidents from exit 9 I-95 down to the Darien Y. It's already an accident-prone area, as shown in the Connecticut crash report database, with 2 high-speed accidents as recently as last week. 3, an inadequate traffic study with a very narrow footprint covering only 3 Stamford streets, stopping short at the Darien border. It was conducted in the dead of winter during a winter school break. The intersection of Weed Avenue and Route 1 is at its absolute busiest in the warmest months. This is a traffic study with lowball estimates. 4, there is no, I repeat, no consideration for foot traffic, cyclists, kids and strollers and their safety in the study. City of Stamford data shows more than 66,000 annually pass through the Weed Avenue Route 1 intersection. 5, Gurley Park is 37 feet from the proposed dispensary in Edson Park, 1/4 mile away, where cannabis can be legally consumed. The impact of cannabis on impaired driving is very well documented. The risk of impaired driving increases significantly for our neighborhood. Our kids live here. 6, wheelchairs load and unload on Weed Avenue from the Holly Pond Plaza Medical Building. 7, there is an 18% increase in property crime related to cannabis dispensaries from a very large study. 8, there's evidence already of illegal consumption of cannabis in dispensary parking lots in Stamford today. An entirely inadequate and impractical plan presented by the applicant.
Mr. Calver, you have 30 seconds.
And 9, as a homeowner, this will no doubt reduce my property value. Respectfully, we ask that the zoning board deny this residential location and that the applicant, who today already owns 75 dispensaries, find a suitable location. Thank you. And I also request, with this new information provided today and this evening, that this public hearing be kept open. Thank you.
I'm gonna need your volume.
Next
thank
we
you.
have Ms. Darlene Meyer.
Thank you. My name is Darlene Meyer, and I live at 48 Hillside Avenue in Darien. I'm a mother of 4 children who have all attended public schools in the area. I oppose the application to the Cannabis Dispensary. This specific location poses significant concerns regarding to the proximity to residential areas and the risk to safety, especially children. As steward of children, we have an obligation to look out for their safety and protection. We cannot overlook the potential risk to the children in this proposed location. Recent reports from the Connecticut Department of Children and Families have shown an uptick in children accidentally ingesting cannabis. Cannabis edible packaging looks very similar to fruit snacks and candy snacks. Within a 1 block of the proposed location for this dispensary, there are 7 school bus stops along Hillside, including 3 elementary, 3 middle, one high school bus stop. 2 of the bus stops are located on Hillside and Post Road. This is all within a 0.2-mile radius of the proposed location, which is dangerously close to the gathering spots of these vulnerable populations. The troubling risk to children should alone be reason to deny the application and relocate the dispensary. The state of Connecticut mandates the cannabis dispensary be 1,000 feet from schools. The 2 bus stops on Hillside and Post Road falls squarely within this radius. When considering the location of the cannabis dispensary, its proximity to the school bus stops should be as troubling as it is to the school. Logically and even legally, these school bus stops are an extension of the school itself and should surely be subject to the same restrictions and analysis. We have over 30 children in our neighborhood and that use these school bus stops. Placing a dispensary so close to these school bus stops not only poses a risk of accidental exposure to cannabis, but also raises questions about the enforcement of regulations meant to protect children from exposure to drugs. The proposed location overlooks these safety concerns. In conclusion, while I recognize the need for access to these dispensaries for cannabis customers, I firmly believe that the proposed location at 1308 East Main Street is inappropriate due to the residential areas and to these school bus stops. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Tracy Morrow.
Thank you so much. My name is Tracy Mara. I am state representative representing both Norwalk and Darien, and I live at 16 Sunswick in Darien. So good evening, Mr. Chair and the zoning board. I really want to thank you for hearing everyone here, and also just for listening to the Darien community as well. I really appreciate you guys extending that and hearing all the concerns. It may surprise you that I have received more emails, phone calls, texts about this dispensary than I have on any other issue throughout my 2 years so far in this term. My background is pharmacy, so I have been very active in a lot of the cannabis legislation up in the state. And I guess I would like to leave you with a few thoughts. As you're sitting here and making these decisions on whether or not you should approve a zoning, I realize that you have your guidelines. You have your rules and your regulations, but I ask you to really step back and think about whether this is right. And I know that the state of Connecticut has told you, yes, it's okay. Yes, your town can make money off of this, but is it right? Because as I'm looking at the studies we see coming in on cannabis, we are seeing increase in side effects. The cannabis that we have now has much higher THC levels than it has before. We are learning so much about this. So sometimes I think a pause in what we're doing may be sometimes the best decision. And a few fun facts. Did you know, and I know you all have talked quite a bit about safety outside the cannabis shop and whether people would be leaving or driving in their car or whether there'd be a security guard watching it. I really appreciate that. But did you know that you can drive while smoking cannabis? That you could have cannabis in your hand and it could be permeating the smell, and a police officer cannot pull you over? Did you know that you could have a car, and I'm not sure if you're all familiar with what hotboxing is, but that's where you close your car windows and you basically get the most bang out of your buck on your cannabis and you keep smelling it. You could have a car hotboxing with children in the car driving away and the police cannot pull you over. I ask you to think about some of the laws that we do not have right now that's helping the traffic issues that we're seeing. Right now, you could be pulled over for inebriated driving and they would test you for alcohol, but you're not, after they found out you have alcohol in your blood, they don't test you for anything else. So we don't know to the extent. I do know as a pharmacist, the additive effects that cannabis has on driving. So like, it's like 1 + 1 = 2. It's not a little bit of cannabis, a little bit of alcohol, but it's like double the effect when you smoke and you use cannabis. And we just do not have the studies behind this. We are learning more and more. So I just ask that you maybe think and pause when we're thinking about safety, because there's so much we don't know. So again, I thank you for hearing all of the community, including Darien. I really appreciate that.
Good, thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Eugene Rhoda.
Yes, my name is Eugene Rhoda. I'm at 11 Cambridge Road. I strongly oppose this, like it seems like everybody else has. I've lived here because it was a nice, I moved here because it's a nice, pleasant neighborhood. It is not Sono. It's not Greenwich Village. We do not need cannabis sellers nearby. I'm already very upset that there's two, count them, two smoke shops, one near McDonald's and one up on, I think it's called Weed Avenue, Cove Road. This is a neighborhood. This is where kids play. This is where 67-year-old men take daily walks. I do not want to get secondhand marijuana smoke. I'm going to leave this short and sweet because this has gone on way, way, way too long tonight. And I'm very upset that everybody is saying, no, do not have this near us. I agree with them. Thank you very much for your time.
Good, thank you.
Next, we have MC Ernst.
Mr. or Ms. Ernst, can you unmute? Okay, let's go on to the next one.
Next, we have Francis and David Bellingham.
Good evening. This is David Bellingham. I live at 2697 Boston Post Road in Darien, and our family is opposed to the dispensary. The planning board has characterized the site as being a commercial zone with only a small residential pocket on its north side. They do accurately state that the east side is subject property is on the Darien border, but conveniently omit the fact that the Darien neighbors are entirely residential properties. There is only one commercial property, which is located diagonally across the street on the Darien side of the border, but all of the immediately adjacent properties are residential. The north side of the boatyard property is residential in Stamford as well. Contrary to the planning board report, the boatyard property is clearly visible from those residences. The commercial zone on this part of East Main Street in Stamford is only one building deep on both sides of the street. Diagonally across the street is a multi-use office building, but behind that office building, Stamford is entirely residential. Directly across the street, as other people have pointed out, is a Stamford Public Park. While the site is more than 1,000 feet from many schools, it is less than 200 feet from school bus stops and residences with young children. Further, as it is also less than 200 feet from the Water's Edge restaurant in Darien, schools may no longer approve the use of this restaurant as a venue for school functions, which would negatively impact their business. The planning board previously denied an application for a site at 1110 East Main Street, due in part to traffic concerns due to proximity to the I-95 exit 9. The same exit 9 proximity concerns exist at the boatyard site as well, but were left out of the planning board minutes. The traffic survey of the subject site was conducted in February when many area schools were on winter break. Vehicular and pedestrian traffic on this part of East Main Street peaks in the summer months due to increased traffic to and from Cove Island Beach. A new survey should be conducted in the summer to get a true indication of potential traffic issues for both vehicles and pedestrians. The Stamford land use and planning personnel are already working on tighter regulations for siting of cannabis dispensaries within the city. These upgraded regulations would classify the boatyard site as inappropriate for such use. Fine Fettle Dispensary is only 1.3 miles from the boatyard. Curaleaf Dispensary is only
Mr. Bellingham, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. Is only 1.1 miles from the boatyard. Does Stamford really need to cite 3 of its potential 5 dispensaries within 1.5 miles of each other? Perhaps a better site can be found in the underserved Turn of River or North Stamford communities. All of the towns which surround Stamford, that would be Greenwich, New Canaan, and Darien, have chosen not to permit cannabis dispensaries within their borders. To cite a dispensary directly on the border of any of these towns is a very bad look for the city of Stamford. So please be a good neighbor and vote no on the application for this site.
Good. Thank you.
Next, we have Wen Lu.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Ren Liu. I live in 5 Brookside Drive, Darien, Connecticut. I strongly oppose the proposition. 5 Brookside Drive is close to the property to the site, and we are a longtime resident for the on the Brookside Drive. In fact, our children grow up here, and we still in our family call the restaurant Smoky Joe's. That's its old name. I want to have a couple of points. One thing is regarding the flooding situation. I respectfully disagree with last time when the Nautilus lady mentioned about the basement of flood. Every time I observe, every time when there's a storm, whether it's a hurricane or nor'easter, if there's a astronomical high tide, then the basement window will be submerged. You can't see it. And basically, every time when Stamford police blocked the Weed Avenue entrance due to the flooding, and then the whole Northern River is flooded, and you wouldn't be able to see the basement of the restaurant. The second thing regarding last time mentioned about people using marijuana product in the parking lot, and we were given promise of having a guard in the parking lot. One thing I want to mention is that it's a shorter distance from the exit door walking across Norton River Bridge to Brookside Drive than walking back to their parking lot. And there's nothing to prevent the shoppers to do that. And so this is the thing that I think I want the zoning board to consider. The third one is that regarding the traffic study, although people are mentioned about
Mr. Liu, you have 30 seconds.
Yes, thank you. Regarding the traffic study, I would also urge the board to consider that the possible protest and picketing of the shop simply because of the strong local community opposition. I yield my time to other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Paul Brindak.
Good evening, board. My name is Paul Brindak. I'm on the board of the Cove Neighborhood Association. I'm the treasurer. We moved to Weed Avenue 161. We are literally right on Weed Avenue. We overlook the road and Holly Pond. Our office, in fact, faces the road. So my wife and I, as we work from home, see the traffic that exists on Weed Avenue. And I can tell you for a fact that it is full of runners, bicyclists, grandparents with strollers. We just saw a mom with a bicycle and a tricycle with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. The amount of traffic that exists here in the spring and the summer is wholly different. It's a different country than it is in February when the traffic study was done. The traffic study was insufficient, and there is not a legal basis to stand on that particular data. Secondly, the flood data, we were told specifically by the attorney that it was using a 25-year high watermark. When we built our house here, and we're in an X zone, we're not even in a flood zone, our home, and we're 100 feet from the water, not where the boathouse is, which is essentially right on the water. We had to have a 100-year high tide watermark study. We also had to have the topography because that was important to look at the 100-year high watermark. Now, I know that they submitted new data today, which is not the way to go. It doesn't give us time at all to digest any of that new information. And there must be a continuance so we're able to do that. The last thing I want to say is talking about smoking in the parking lots. If you are aware, there are 7 parking lots literally right in that area, a stone's throw. There's Giovanni's right across the street, huge parking lot where people could go in the back and smoke dope. Chilton, the garage, which is essentially contiguous to the property, they have an open garage. Any car could go in there and just do what they want to do, particularly after 5, because it's an investment banking firm and they're out when the market closes. Garley Park was mentioned to you. Edson Park, which is a catty corner from us, is another place where they're already smoking dope. And more people will not help. The medical building on the
Mr.
corner
Brendak, you have 30 seconds.
and East Main is also an open garage. Also, right up from there is Kitchens by Dean, which is another parking lot. And right next to that is another medical center with an open parking lot. So when you want to talk about people going and smoking dope in the parking lot, there are literally right there. Maybe it's because it's one of the reasons they're interested. There's too many open public places that are not policed. So again, the flood is an issue, the traffic study is an issue, and the smoking in the
Your
parking
3
lots
minutes
is an
is
issue,
up,
apart from
Mr.
everything
Brendak.
everybody's already said. I want to thank the board for their time, for their consideration. I want to thank you for your volunteerism. We are very appreciative as Stamford residents, but I can tell you that we will not
Mr.
stand
Brendak,
for
your time
over
is up.
500 members in our
Okay,
Cove
please
Neighborhood
wrap it
Association.
up. Thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Virginia Losito.
Good evening. My name is Dan Losito. I'm here with my wife, Ginny. We live at 61 Hollow Tree Ridge Road in Darien. We are opposed to the petition. Good evening to the members of the board and all the other concerned citizens who are remotely present. The special permits regulation in part prohibits the board from granting a permit if the use of a property will be injurious to the neighborhood or has the potential to disturb the health, safety, and peaceful enjoyment of property. The applicants appear completely unconcerned about the safety of their neighbors or about the risks of having a dispensary in close proximity to residential neighborhoods of the Cove or southwestern areas of Darien. The applicants cavalierly asserted in the last meeting that their proposal adequately addressed concerns many of us in attendance have regarding increased crime, property damage, theft, and loitering. A number of peer-reviewed academic studies, of which I would like the board to take notice, belies that assertion. The topic of marijuana dispensaries and their impact on neighborhood crime has been studied in various research articles for nearly a decade, and the findings are anything but encouraging. In fact, they support the concerns that expressed in many, and they support the concerns expressed by many people here at the hearing. One study published in Justice Quarterly in 2015 examined the relationship between marijuana dispensaries and neighborhood crime and disorder in Denver, Colorado. The study found that neighborhoods with one or more medical or recreational marijuana dispensaries saw increased crime rates that were significantly higher than in neighborhoods without any commercial marijuana activity. Indeed, the study found the crime rates in neighborhoods with new marijuana dispensaries increased initially between 26 and, get this number, 1,452% compared to neighborhoods without dispensaries. I'm dubious that the Stamford and Darien police departments have the resources to anticipate and stamp out this increased criminal activity, and if consulted, would probably tell the board their preference would be to avoid the issue altogether and not grant the special permit. Another study in the Journal of Prevention suggests that the effects of availability of marijuana outlets on crime extend well beyond the immediate specific areas where the outlets are located, to occur in areas well beyond, in this case, well beyond the Cove and Southwest Darien and other residential areas right near the site. The board should be very careful not to underestimate the negative ripple effects this business will have throughout.
Mr. Lucido, you have 30 seconds.
In their prior testimony, the applicants took pains to limit their comments about safety to the property, to the actual property in question, discussing only their security procedures that rely completely upon security guards present only during hours of operation and cameras not monitored outside business hours. With all due respect, their approach is insufficient, misleading, and not enough in the face of the mounting academic evidence. They should be held to account, and this petition should be rejected. Thank you for granting me the time to speak. I look forward to your wise and dutiful denial of this petition. Alternatively, if you can't deny it immediately, we would request the board keep the public.
I'm sorry, your time is up. If you could wrap it up, please.
Sure. Opportunity to speak and attend to consider the new information that was just provided by the applicants at the 11th hour. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Next, we have MC Ernst.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is MC Ernst. I live at 5 Red Cedar Drive in Darien, Connecticut. I am against this proposal. I think that I want to reflect what many of the other commentators have already stated about the traffic study being insufficient and inadequate and inaccurate in terms of how it portrays the traffic patterns around this intersection and around this part of town. It needs to be redone during a time that there is a more conservative measure of real traffic patterns, including pedestrians, cyclists, runners, walkers that frequent this area and that walk around this area. As you've heard from many of the other folks who've spoken already, there are many, many children and families that are nearby who spend time recreationally outdoors, and the traffic patterns that this is going to create and the increased traffic this dispensary is going to create is really going to pose a lot of hazards for those families and those folks, both driving and on foot around this area. I think also that we heard from someone at the last meeting about how horrible the traffic has been on Hope Street since Fine Fettle has been opened. I'm just curious to know if there have been any follow-up traffic studies following the opening of both Fine Fettle and Curaleaf to see how traffic patterns have changed and been exacerbated by the openings of these facilities, and wondering if that can be a reasonable estimation of what we can expect to happen here at this intersection if this dispensary is open. I am a mother of 3 children. I have an 8-year-old, 6-year-old, and 3-year-old, all who attend Hindley Elementary School and NP&S preschool. Very, very close by. Their bus stops are very close by as well. And I'm concerned by the fact that we have a facility whose substances are so dangerous that they are required to have guarded parking lots and 24/7 monitored cameras around their facilities. If this substance is that dangerous and requires that much intense security measures, should we really be having something like that so nearby to so many children in schools? I really urge the board to think about that and to understand that that only goes so far. It only goes so far as the parking lot of this dispensary. What happens when they drive right around across the river to Brookside Road to partake in these substances? around these young families. I urge the
Ms.
board
you
to
have
think
30
about that.
seconds.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it, and I hope you'll consider everything that everyone here on this call has said today.
Good, thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Persixe.
Thank you. You can hear me now, right?
Yes.
My
Yes.
name is Per Sexa. I live at 42 Beach Drive in Darien, Connecticut. I also own a single-family home located at 26 Webster Road in Stamford, which is in the Cove neighborhood that's affected. So I have both perspectives on this. I've been a resident of Darien for almost 30 years now, so I know the boathouse location. I've been to the restaurant there. One of the things that strikes me as odd is no one has spoken to the fact that while it's a non-conforming parking lot that was used for a restaurant, the guests could park in the parking lot and go up the back entrance. They did not need to compete with the cars coming into or out of that parking lot. They could go up the stairs and go to the restaurant. With the change in use, that access is gone for the reasons the applicant have said, which is they need to have a secure single entrance at the front of the building. So when you look at the non-conforming parking lot, which is less than Stamford's required 20 feet, and you look at how tight that is to get just 2 cars through, it actually leaves no room for pedestrians to walk safely from the parking lot to the front of the building. What is that going to do? That's going to back up traffic. Cars coming in, cars going out, they're going to slow down, try to make accommodations for the people that are there. So that, to me, indicates, much like others have said, there really hasn't been a thorough traffic analysis here that takes into account foot traffic, people, and everyone else that's there. And that's my major concern here. I was surprised when Luke was talking about Vision Zero, and he put up that map of all the Tier 1 deadly accident zones. And guess what? The biggest red dot, one of many, right at that juncture in front of the boathouse. So I think there are many reasons here that the board should request a much more thorough traffic analysis and impact. I went back and looked at both the Norotan River Bridge construction project and the study that they did then. It didn't just look at the tiny amount of traffic on the road. It took into account, what they consider, the corridor, which takes into account, I-95 and everything else that feeds into it. There's a lot more to be considered here. So I just asked the board not to rush to a decision, to take the time to get a full traffic report that really addresses the concerns here. Because, the state
Mr.
just
Sexa,
invested
30 seconds.
Thank you. The state just invested $8 to $9 million. I'm not sure where that project ended. And they just finished putting up those new traffic lights with all the changes to protect pedestrians. And now we're going to have a different use of this building where if you have to make a left-hand turn to go in, you have to cross 3 lanes of traffic now, because you've got the left turning lane that takes you down to Weed Avenue, and you got to cross those 2 plus 2 moving traffics to get in. This is not a well thought out plan. So that's really my suggestion, is that the board take the time to get the data to make a much better informed decision here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Catherine Barrios.
Yes, my name is Catherine Barrios. I live at 3 Cambridge Road. My property is at the corner of Cambridge with Matthews Avenue. I'm 1 block off of Weed, and I have a clear line of sight to Weed Avenue and Holly Pond. In fact, the lower portion of my property is in the flood zone, and it has flooded over the time period which I have lived there, which is from 1984. I actually had made a note of the comments previously of the previous speaker. I saw the 3 red dots from the Tier 1 study that was presented in the very first presentation tonight. And those 3 dots happen to be Cortland Avenue, Seaside Avenue, and Weed. And we know that this particular dispensary is being cited where it's citing because of traffic coming from Darien, east of the location, and traffic coming off of exit 9 at 95. because I think Mr. Freeman let the kind of the, what do you say, out of the bag with his remarks to the finance board that were reported, where he said something to the extent that, you know, Stanford is not going to have the that the new dispensaries in Norwalk and other cities have reduced the territory from which we draw customers substantially to these dispensaries in Stamford. So it's very clear that this dispensary has been cited where it's cited to draw traffic from exit 9, which means those other three those 3 points, Cortlandt, Seaside, and Weed, need to be included in a traffic study. Also, has been pointed out, pedestrian traffic on Weed itself. There are no sidewalks. There's no safe way to walk on Weed. You walk into the roadway and cars speed down. There are many accidents on that street. I had made my own notes about the parking lot. There needs to be a separate walkway, possibly with stairs and a railing, so that people that go from the lower parking lot up to the main entrance need to have a safe way to get there. And that's further going to constrict the ability of cars to get in and out of that lot. Also, the medical building across the street.
Ms. Barrios, you have 30 seconds.
Okay. The third thing I wanted to mention was the flooding zone in the parking lot. Has the Stamford Police Department opined on their ability to pull cars and or people that have gone into there in the middle of a flood event and have left cars and people that need to be pulled out? I submit that will also go on to East Main Street and start blocking traffic. Finally, I want to know, if this application is denied, will you sign a stipulation as happened in
your
111?
your time is up. Could you
Okay,
just
I want to make
wrap it up, please?
one phone,
No.
one closing.
You know what?
One
We need to
statement.
get to
Excuse
a lot
me,
of other
Mr.
people
Stein.
here.
Excuse me, Mr. Stein.
I'm sorry, everyone
you
gets
are
3 minutes and you're over your time.
You are establishing
Okay.
this in a multiracial, in a multi-ethnic, in a lower middle income
I'm sorry,
section
your
of
time
Stanford.
is up. Thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Shannon Shell.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Shannon Zhou. I live at 33 Dickinson Road in Darien, Connecticut. I am against the application of the cannabis dispensary at the proposed location. First of all, I want to state that I understand the proposal does meet at least some of the minimum requirement by the town, but I want to stress that what is legal does not mean that it is an appropriate location for the residents, the community around, and most importantly, safety and well-being of our children. With that said, I would like to mention a couple of comments. First, I want to reiterate, a lot of the other speakers have mentioned, there are many, many families with infants, toddlers, and young kids live very, very close to the proposed site for the dispensary. On the Darien side, there are many public school bus stops throughout Hillside Avenue, with the one intersecting Boston Post Road with only 880 feet from the proposed location. What does 880 feet mean? It's a 4-minute walk, it's less than 1 minute on bike, and not to mention older children are allowed to walk free and bike pass well within 1,000 feet of the proposed location, with sighting of the store signs and sense of potential strong odor. The fact that the establishment would be right next to about a mile from Darien Hindley Elementary School and also YMCA about half a mile away, this is a very children-heavy activity zone. It really brings up new concern to approve an application to put a cannabis dispensary so close in the midst of all the young children we want to protect. In addition to the proximity of the proposed location of the dispensary, there is already another one at 1136, merely 0.4 miles away. I've already commented on my concern with the proposed location on its own. But with this approved, there would be not one, but two within 0.4 miles of Brookside and Hillside families, many of which have young children going to Hindley School in the area. Third, traffic. I lived here for 10 years. Before pandemic, I actually commuted daily, driving across Boyard location. And starting from pandemic, I drive.
Ms. Shah, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. I drive across the same road every day to get my son to Chelsea Pier daycare. I want to say that the location is right at the curve of the road today, where the traffic situation is already very challenging. With any more traffic, it is only, becoming more concerning, as it specifically posing significant risk to the residents, especially children's safety. And as a conclusion, I would like to appeal to the board to please do not approve the application, but please take into consideration on why the law has the requirement to start with, who
Okay,
and what are we trying
you need to
check.
conclude, please.
Thank you very much for your time,
Good.
and I really appreciate it.
Good, thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Kristen Ryuk.
My name is Kirsten Rayak. I live at 101 Seaside Avenue in Stamford. And I appreciate the opportunity to just say that I also, as a local resident, oppose this this change of use. One thing I would add to all of the previous comments about traffic and quality of life is that the whole neighborhood here is just inundated with trash and with parked cars, with people who have already gone to either the liquor store, the smoke shop. I take a trash bag with me as I walk my dog. I observe people throwing litter out. They sit in their cars, they smoke, they drink. Adding one more shop for recreational imbibing into this neighborhood that is already overstressed in this way is really uncalled for and will have a detrimental effect on our quality of life. That's all. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Monica Twal.
Thank you. That was very quick. Yes, I would like you to oppose these, as you know, I would like you to oppose this dispensary. Now, for the reasons as follows. One, my concern is that they're asking to add an additional floor to refit the building. Who's not to say that they're not going to make that into a grow farm down the road? That could be. I mean, they're adding how many square feet? From 2,100 square feet to 6,072. A lower for storage. Now, that's a big amount of storage for marijuana. I'm not a specialist in this. They are. I know they come in plants. You have to grow them, and then they get reduced to something. So that's a concern. Maybe eventually down the road, this medical and adult use cannabis will turn into recreational, and they will make it into a grow farm in that location, because they are adding footage. The next thing is Luis Vega. He owns a hemp farm called Weepal Farms. You can pick it up anywhere from if you do a Google search. And I noticed that he has one of the bigger Meridia Capital Partners who he is associated with. And they are a multi-state cultivation operation with operations in 39 states plus DC. So this is a big, big operation. And that concerns me as well for the state of Connecticut. Because as they said, alcohol is the same thing as alcohol. Yes, but alcohol cannot sustain an economy. And like tobacco in the olden days, in the colonial days, marijuana could possibly do that. Next, FEMA. You obviously do have to get an application down to FEMA. There are categorical exclusions for that called KTEX. And one of them is number 5 and number 6. I think number 6 applies more to our location. An effect on the quality of the human environment that is likely to be highly controversial in terms of scientific validity, likely to be highly...
So you have 30 seconds.
To involve unique or unknown environment risks. So that would automatically exclude probably the marijuana dispensary. traffic is also a very big concern, and they only spent like 5 minutes on it. We ought to pass a law shortly in Stamford that says that no dispensaries located within 20 miles of each other, as additional regulatory requirements and restrictions apply to this. Stamford, we need to get on this. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Next, we have Faye Hubert.
Good evening. Good evening. Hello?
Yes,
we can
you're,
hear you.
you're
Oh,
on,
okay.
give
Hi.
us-
Hi, good evening. My name is Faye Gaber. I represent my husband and Eric Gaber. We live at 218 Old King Highway, South Darien. I will have 2 points. As one is as a realtor. I'm a local realtor. Recently, I just take my client for a rental near East Main Street, driving by. My client made a comment driving on the East Side. Gee, there's so many smoke shop. You have smoke shop, 2 smoke shop, and 1 dispensary on East Main Street. And on the other side, you have a also a smoke shop. And my client said, I don't want to live in this area. I don't want my kids to see. The problem as a local realtor, I'm shocked to see so many condensed on East Main Street. I have no problem to open dispensary shop, but why all of them concentrate on East and Cove area? I can assure you another dispensary on Brookside will damage the local real estate around the neighborhood. It already does. My client asked me, do not sell any property around the area. As a realtor, I also want to tell you the flood on current boatyard. I sold 20 Brookside, Darien years ago. The house was damaged by, I think is a few years by one of the storm. When I sold the house for $380,000 because the house was flooded, damaged, and the new owner completely got it. So on that street, if you look at the map, Norwegian River come from the bigger stream and go through the Brookside. And when the rains harder,
Ms. Gaber, you have 30 seconds.
Okay. And the second, I want you to consider community. What kind of community we plan to build on? When my child was little, I want her to read, and I put all the books everywhere. Is that the same thing we want our children to smoke, want to educate them to dispensary? So when you take consideration, probably some your
3 minutes
other
are up.
fathers and
Can
grandparents.
please conclude?
Thank you. I want you to consider if this dispensary to open next to you, you are the father and you are probably grandparents. Connie probably is mother of, could be a mother.
Ms. Gobert,
Would
your time
open
is
next
up.
to your
You
door?
need to
Thank you.
finish. Good.
Thank
you.
Speaker is Mr. Michael Tyler.
Yes, good evening. My name's Michael Tyler. I live at 17 Brookside Drive. I'm within 400 feet of the boatyard. The traffic pattern of getting on and off of my road can be very difficult at times. As we've heard, the accidents and the pedestrian traffic, as well as accidents on 95, attribute to the increased flow of traffic onto Route 1 at times. As you just heard by the previous speaker, real estate, opening up the shop in this area would be a detriment to our property values in such close proximity to a place of this nature. People don't want to live by it. Would you want to live by it? Again, as you've heard, we would request that with light of all the new information that has been provided, that this application remain open, and that I want to speak about the cameras and the proximity to our homes. You have an establishment that is going to be guarded, cambered, and what about our privacy on the road? We're going to be subject to, having the cameras showing towards our road and everything else. And just to have peace of mind that we could go about our day without being having our privacy invaded, much less having people who may want to mull around and just be in the area because of what they are doing. There's bus stops also in close proximity that add to the pedestrian traffic up and down our road as people use that as an access to get to the service station down off of 95. So again, there's a lot to consider here. You guys have a difficult job ahead of you, but I do believe that there's been ample things outlined in front of you for you guys to consider to
you have 30 seconds left.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tyler.
Next, we have Mr. John Temple. Mr. Temple, can you unmute yourself? I see he has unmuted.
Okay. Let's keep going. We can come back to Mr. Temple.
Yes. Next, we have Ms. Holly Huang.
Hi, this is Holly Huang. I live in 11 Hillcrest Avenue, Darien, Connecticut. I have been living in both Stamford and Darien for the past 18 years. Both of my kids grew up in Stamford and Darien, and we use the Covenant Park and also Darien YMCA heavily. So right now, my kids, they are already grown up, but when we talk about their life in Darien and Stamford area, both the Covenant Park and also the YMCA bring back so many great memories. And I want other children share the same memory as my kids do. So I strongly against this petition. I think we need to build a great community. We need to protect the kids. When the kids grow up, when they think of both Stamford and Darien, it should be, beautiful memory instead of, this something like this. So as an adult, I think it's our responsibility to protect this community, to build a beautiful community for all the children in the area. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Temple, can you unmute again?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, my name is John Temple. I live at 173 Weed Avenue in Stamford, about a quarter mile from the boathouse. My wife and I bought, and I'm opposed to this application. My wife and I bought our 200-year-old house on Weed Avenue in 2007, and the residential nature of the neighborhood was an important part of our decision in making that purchase, as well as a beautiful perennial garden, by the way. And I encourage the board, if you're driving down Weed Avenue in early June, to take a look at my peonies, which should be in full bloom by then. I mention this to emphasize the importance of the residential nature of Weed Avenue. There are no retail stores on or adjacent to Weed Avenue. Yes, there are the two restaurants in the Boathouse and Giovanni's, but those are service businesses. Diners stay for an hour or two, and don't impact the residential nature of the neighborhood. By contrast, a dispensary, a retail store, is a transactional business. Customers will visit for maybe 5 minutes. So the traffic issues will be much more intense. Purchasers will inevitably seek out the parks on Weed Avenue to consume their purchases. So approval of this application will be injurious to the residential nature of the neighborhood. And it will impact property values along Weed Avenue, including mine, and nearby streets in Darien. The special permit regulation state as has been stated earlier, operations in connection with special permit uses shall not be injurious to the neighborhood. In my opinion, this application will be injurious to my neighborhood. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
We have Ms. Annabelle Figueroa.
Thank you. Good evening, dear members of the zoning board and to the public. My name is Annabelle Figueroa, and I am a state representative for District 148 and a city representative representing District 8. So this evening, as residents of the East Side and members of the community, we are deeply concerned about the proposed establishment of a cannabis dispensary at 1308 East Main Street. And I say we, as I am speaking on behalf of many of my neighbors who have entrusted me to speak on their behalf. While not so close to schools as the other two dispensaries proposals, we cannot ignore the closeness to business in the area, which includes Giovanni's restaurants, YMCA, a church, and the proximity to Cove Island and Hunt Park, which is located on Corbin Avenue. We have children in the neighborhood or are concerned for, and we are concerned for them. We don't want them seeing the dispensary and smelling weed every day in our neighborhood. This is not just an issue for us as parents, but for our entire community. As a resident of Long Avenue and someone whose kids grew up under the bullets, constant police car sirens, and many times ambulance as well, I am deeply concerned about the opening of another dispensary in the same zip code. Residents of Long Avenue, Coastal Street, Lincoln Avenue, and many other streets in the area can testify to the horrors we all experienced in the neighborhood during the last 20 years. You as members of this board and the proponents of this dispensary need to understand the suffering and fears of this community. It took more than a decade for peace and tranquility to come back to our neighborhood. Allowing so many dispensaries within the underserved communities can be perceived as discriminatory, since those who lack social and healthcare services are concentrated in these areas. We believe that our neighborhoods should be a safe and healthy environment for our children. The presence of cannabis dispensaries could compromise,
30 seconds.
could compromise the safety and well-being. Therefore, we urge you to oppose the establishment of this dispensary at this location. Lastly, dear members, on this board, let us not forget that tobacco was promoted as relatively harmless before nicotine addiction became endemic and the link to lung cancer was proven. The opioid industry marketed its drugs as non-addictive and safe in the early 1990s, and we're still paying the price. Let us learn from our historical mistake and not repeat them with marijuana. Drug addiction and death have increased during the COVID-19 pandemic. We urgently need smart public health policies that follow the science, prevent
Representative Figueroa, can you wrap it up,
I am
please?
about to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. prevent addiction, and decrease mental illness, including psychosis, depression, and suicide. If we, as a city, continue to favor taxes over the health and welfare of our residents, soon we will be looking for additional resources to restore the safety and health of those affected by the unwanted exposure to those harmful odors. So I thank you so much for allowing me to speak this evening, and thank you for your service to our community as well.
Good, thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Gina Calabrese.
Good evening. I'm Gina Calabrese, and I live at 300 Seaside Avenue on the corner of Seaside and Cove Road, just a few blocks from Cove Island Park. I am against the application. Stamford is getting 5 dispensaries, but unfortunately, our city regulations have not kept up with cannabis market developments. You need to pause applications and take a comprehensive approach to regulation, including where it can be smoked. We have restrictions on smoking cigarettes near building entrances. People would be up in arms if they smelled cigarette smoke, secondhand smoke, as commonly as we've been smelling weed all over our city, in stores and on the streets. From my home, I can already access 2 dispensaries within 2 miles. Nautilus will be 1 mile from my home. Why do 3 of the 5 dispensaries planned for all of Stamford have to go into the southeast corner of this city? It's inequitable. Because other states have legalized recreational cannabis, there are several studies of the effects of cannabis businesses on neighborhoods. I have a question that I would like answered. I would like to know if our Land Use Bureau has studied the problem at all. Have they read any of these studies? Have they looked at regulations from other municipalities? Have they done their work? Because I have spent a lot of my own time pulling these studies to educate you on what the problems are. And there is a consensus that density is associated with harms and or inequities, and that this has to be considered by policymakers. A study of Portland, Oregon, titled "What About Equity?" found that after the state legalized recreational weed, dispensaries were concentrated in less advantaged neighborhoods. A study from Washington State found the same thing, because people in well-off neighborhoods don't allow them to come there, or the zoning laws are such that they can't be placed there, and their children are protected. In addition, there is an association with increased crime. Now, those studies are mixed, but even studies that don't find an overall increase in crime rates have found an increase in robberies, because people are going into dispensaries with cash and coming out with weed. And so criminals will come and try to get the weed from them, and it increases crime. Also, the connection between dispensaries and alcohol retail outlets, like we have on East Main Street and in our neighborhood, tends to
Calabrese, you have 30 seconds.
Okay. And other issues are the impact on housing values. People do not want to buy homes near dispensaries. I've heard other people say, well, you've already got smoke shops and alcohol stores. That's exactly why we don't need a 3rd dispensary on the east side. And of course, the proximity to the park is a concern, because that's where people are going to hang out and get high, and that's where a lot of kids are. I know my time is almost up.
Okay, yeah, if you could wrap it up, please.
Your powers under 19C for special permits should make you absolutely comfortable denying this application. You've heard all the facts from me and every other speaker that it can harm the neighborhood.
You need to,
how about
Ms. Calabrese, you need to finish up.
W location? That's empty, and that's in North Stamford, and there's a police substation. Maybe Nautilus can go there. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Adrienne Tovar.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi, this is Adrian Tovar. For 2693 Boston Post Road in Darien. I drive by the property every morning. I see a preschool bus with preschool children getting off that corner, and I can't imagine, armed guards on that corner of that property. And why would they have armed guards if there wasn't a threat of additional crime? And this is a for-profit company. So if they are not obligated to keep those guards after a year or whatnot, they're not going to spend the money to do that. So that makes our neighborhood even more dangerous. Mr. LaGuardia said that if we don't want it here, then find another location for us. So it doesn't seem like they're that particular on this property. They just want to get a dispensary established as soon as possible so that they can get another one. So, so I think they should find another place because this is not the place. We're asked to trust them, but they show deceiving pictures of the property. They say in the meeting that it's not in the heart of a residential area where it is. They admitted that their traffic study was understated, but if it's understated, I mean, they're still saying 900 some cars a month more is not significant, which, even if you do any more studies, that's definitely significant. I think, the decisions are being based on biased data. They put a double line on the diagram to make it seem like there's enough room to pass, but I've been going to Smokey Joe's, for 20 years, and there's room for one car at a time. And again, that doesn't account for, pedestrians, because pedestrians wouldn't cross up that hill because they would go inside the property like the other person had said. So there's no way for two cars to fit, even though if they draw a double line on their diagram, which also would lead to a bottleneck, illegal lefts, illegal U-turns,
you have 30 seconds.
On a dangerous curve, trespassing Giovanni's, trespassing Brookside's just to get to it. I don't know if they even meet the special permit requirement. It does not preserve the existing character of this close-knit and historical community. My kids used to walk to lunch to Giovanni's and Little League celebrations, and now we're going to armed guards. This needs to be, I'm against it, and this shouldn't happen in this neighborhood at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Brian Wood.
Sorry about that. I was not expecting to be called in. So, what you've heard from everyone here is that we are completely against it. This is Brian Wood. I live at 10 Brookside Drive. To say that there are no residential properties adjacent to the property, I am 100% of their border, right? So if you look at that border on that whole diagram, up and down the street where it says Darien border, I am that property right there. Additionally, we also own 2 properties in Stamford, so I have a vested interest in both Darien and Stamford. So I really feel that you've heard everything you need to make this decision. You need to meet the 5 requirements to approve this. They have not provided enough information, nor have they met the requirements. I think it should be a pretty easy decision for you guys to say no to this. I don't really have anything else to add. The rampway back up is a nightmare. I remember going there when it was Smokey Joe's, parking there. You really did have to go through the building to get there. It's 18 feet 4 inches. There's bollards on the corner. There is no room for a sidewalk there. If you take a 3-foot sidewalk, you're talking 15 feet on there. So there's no way to put that much traffic up and down. It's a safety hazard. I have nothing else to really add, but I would ask that you would keep this open for public comments for another 2 weeks so we can digest and consider what other information has been presented. But I think it should be an easy decision for you all. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Christina McDaniel.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Christina McDaniel. I hold a PhD in neuropsych, and my husband had spoken earlier. His name is William McDaniel. Well, I'm gonna give you a background of what I do. I got my PhD because I work for the drug study, biggest drug study actually in United States. It's called ANSARC. We develop drugs for Parkinson's, MS, and biggest neurological disorders there is. Number one, I'm going to tell you with this drug study, we don't even prescribe marijuana to our patients if you have a children underage in your house. We want to make sure that every single one is aware that the patient is taking marijuana. Now, if you're going to come into my neighborhood, we moved all the way from New York City and come to my neighborhood and put this and this dispensary and put my children and in a safe neighborhood, then we're totally against this. We moved here, you know, the first thing that we did, there are people already that's using our area, our property to cross to go to 95. There's illegal dumping in our back. Can you imagine if you have to put a dispensary? If I looked out of my window right now in my bedroom, I could see the boatyard. So you are telling me that you're going to put this is for medical and recreational use. Absolutely not, because this is just going to be a recreational use. My children are 7 and 8 years old. They go to Hindley. We are actually proposing to have a bus stop in our Brookside neighborhood because, again, our children has to walk up high on this hill. Now, if there's a bus stop, you know how many bus stops is needed here? That means the safety of our children comes first. I don't care about the tax. I don't care about anything else. Our property area is going to go down. The value is going to go down. The safety of this neighborhood is going to go down. We
Ms.
didn't move
McDaniel,
here for
you
nothing.
have 30 seconds.
Thank you. That's all I'm just going to tell you. The neurons of the people that's going to be around here is just going to go down as well.
Good, thank you.
Next, we have Yuan Zhu.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and all the board members. I see you all tired, but we are too, but we still up here because there's serious concern here. First, I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak out tonight. My name is Larry
your name
I
and
live on
address?
15 Brookside Drive, Darien, which is about 1 minute's walk away from the proposed location in this application. So my family, my wife and I are strongly opposed this application because of the safety and traffic concern. But from all the hearing, you can see we cannot emphasize more in this hearing and the last hearing. So that's, I know you have your own law, so I'll read it on paper. So the decision of this special permission not only rely on the buffering zone, but also the nature of the proposed use in relation to the site and the surrounding area, and should not injure to the neighborhood, should be harmony to the general purpose of this neighborhood. So as you hear from all the people living in the neighborhood, the location is in the permit zone, but almost all close surrounding area are the residential areas. And clearly, you can see in the map. So the nature of these speaks out. So most of people against this is strongly opposed to this application. And as a parent, I'm sure you as a grandparents or parents, I'm a father of 6-year-old boy. My son works between school bus and home most of the days, and same as other 8 or more kids live on the Brookside Drive. So there's already traffic mistakenly drives through the street trying to get onto the ramp on the 95. So opening this dispensary will add more traffic to the street and will cause an overall cost on the post road. So there's a significant safety concern in our neighborhood where the kids can run, walk, and bike on the street. So these will put our children in danger, high risk of accidents. And also,
you have 30 seconds.
Okay. And also there's no, hasn't mentioned is not, the dispensary not only attract the people who drive, but also taking the public transportation. So those people can walk on the street after purchasing and consume this purchase on the residential street or the park nearby. So this will not only causing the safety concern and also the traffic. The car need to yell these pedestrians across the street. So in summary, I think both traffic and the foot traffic will introduced by this application will disturb the safety and peaceful environment we all share in the junction of the Stamford and Darien. So I'm pleased asking the zoning board to consider these public concerns when voting for this.
Okay, I'm sorry, you need to conclude now.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, I finished. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Miss Maria Wallman.
Hi, this is Nate Wallman. Miss Maria, my wife, went to sleep because she just couldn't take it anymore. But I live on 30 Island Heights Circle, and I'm opposed to this.
What town is that in, Mr. Wallman?
That is in Stamford. I'm just above Weed Avenue.
Got
Weed
it.
Avenue runs from the Post Road down to Cove Beach. And that's always been very busy during the weekends. But with the advent of remote work and more people working in Stamford, it's become extremely busy, not just cars, but lots of bicyclists and runners on Weed Avenue going down to the beach during the weekday. So traffic's become much, much more difficult on the weekdays as compared to the weekend. But all the other reasons that people have given are very logical. I don't see how you could continue to support this proposal for the dispensary. But I would ask the decision makers to think about all of the things that you've heard and consider it in terms of white supremacy. What are we doing here? What's happening? Why do we need 3 dispensaries in such a small location? Doesn't make sense. So please, when you make your decision, think of it that way. Why does a neighborhood like this have to have so many dispensaries so close to each other? It doesn't make any sense. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Andrew Kaiser.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Hi, my name is Andrew Kaiser. I am resident at 29 Outlook Drive in Darien, Connecticut, and I am opposed to this application. Having gone through the previous hearing and then having looked at some of the materials presented, I want to bring up 2 main points, and particularly as relates to whether or not a special permit should be allowed. The first is looking at primarily the welfare and the practical realities of creating and servicing a dispensary at this location. The first is looking at the parking lot and parking lot consumption. In the first hearing, it was addressed that the NOLS would take measures to prevent parking lot consumption, that there are adequate measures that should be put in place to prevent that. However, they failed to address the issues of consuming the product on the road, in public spaces nearby, on shared pedestrian walkways coming from the area. As was noted by many of the other residents of this area, this is a pedestrian area. There's easy access to the cove, to beaches by the cove, to beaches on Weed Beach, as well as access to lots in areas next to the YMCA. The YMCA is not only a treasured community center, it's also a place of a preschool where my child will be attending this upcoming September. and is also a current place where I take my young child to spend his afternoons. They have not been able to address the ability to limit the consumption of their product in the surrounding areas, and therefore being injurious to the current neighborhood. Second is going into the actual practical reality of weed consumption. I was just down by Grand Central, where there's a nearby dispensary today, and also, oddly enough, on the same Monday just before the first hearing. Just walking around New York City or anywhere proximate to a dispensary can just tell anybody who has a nose that the presence of a dispensary heightens the consumption of marijuana on the streets and public spaces around the dispensary. I'm not quite sure what studies that they were referencing, but the increase of noxious fumes and wanton use of marijuana products around dispensary is clearly increased whenever there are
Mr. Kaiser,
dispensaries
you have 30
nearby.
seconds.
And finally, I'd like to, thank you. And I would also like to bring up the matter of traffic, as many people point out, that it is a highly trafficked area. It is already quite busy, and the traffic study that was previously presented had very clearly cherry-picked data that was inconsistent with conclusions, representations that the representatives of the company presented. It's the number of inconsistencies and errors in the data they presented.
Okay, you need to wrap it up now, please.
All right. Finally, to say that the information they provide has been consistently proven to be full of holes, inconsistent, and it's hard to believe what conclusions or what applications they provided that would be truthful. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Kevin Quick.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Quick. I am a lifelong resident of Stamford, Connecticut. Was born on and raised, and am still a resident of Weed Avenue, having been in another part of Stamford before, but happy to be back. I concur and support all of the previous comments from John Ward, the policeman from Brookside Drive, James Calver, Paul Brindak. I am absolutely against and opposed to this proposition. I think I am actually also a real estate agent of almost 30 years. I feel in support of my colleague Faye Gobert that spoke earlier, this is not something that will bring rising values or better values to real estate within our community. When I show properties, if people were to say, what is that on the corner, it would not be favorable. It is not something I feel is aesthetically of value to our neighborhood. I think the traffic issues have been discussed, and I concur with all that have supported the comments above that they were done at an unfavorable time of year and so on. I do believe firmly that crime will obviously go up. There was an article in the Stamford Advocate today about Curaleaf and the fact that there's smoke and pot smells in the air. I think this will likely happen here as well. I also agree with the comments about children and what's going on, and that they're seeing this as a standard in their community. This is not favorable. Flooding. Hello, I have been through floods my entire life on Weed Avenue. Storm Sandy. There is no way when I had 2 feet of water in my house on Weed Avenue that the property at the boathouse did not have water. And these comments that it did not have water in the basement are outrageously completely ridiculous. Google Maps are self-evident in supporting the proximity and clear proximity of residential roof lines, literally roof lines within feet of this proposed location. It's obvious that this is a residential neighborhood. And lastly, I also say that we're losing a neighborhood restaurant. I go back even farther. I can talk about the Crow's Nest, Rugantino's, then Smoky Joe's, and now what we have now. We're losing a great neighborhood establishment, a place for people to gather.
Mr. Quick, you have 30 seconds.
Very well. This is not a place to have this type of people gathering. It is a place for social, friendly gathering, not a place for having something like this. And I do concur that with the Gurley Park across the street, the Darien Y, St. John's Church, and 3 other contiguous churches in Darien, this is not the place to have this type of establishment. I strongly encourage the board to take this under serious advisement and vote no.
Thank you.
Good.
Next
Thank
we
you.
next we have Mr. Dave Adams.
Good evening again, board. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I just want to reiterate what a lot of other neighbors have been saying all evening. You've heard it from every corner of Stamford, and especially around this area, from all walks of life, from people in Darien, from people in Stamford. This is not the right location. I remember listening to another speaker from the last hearing 2 weeks ago who brought up how this was really much more motivated. Locations like this, the East Main Street location, the West Main Street location, the one in Japan, are motivated because they are so close to I-95 and because we're going to get traffic from all different areas around us that have banned this material from being sold within their limits. They're right. But there's other locations in Stamford that are going to be viable locations for an establishment like this to exist, operate, and enjoy a profitable business and not be so impactful and so egregious to the surrounding neighbors. I highly encourage this applicant to find another location in Stamford that is going to meet their needs better than this location. And I hope that the board agrees. Thank you very much, and thank you for your service. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Next we have Don Ecker.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's Patrick Edgar. My wife just put the dogs to bed. I'm Darien, 64 Greenleaf Avenue, 34-year resident. Strongly against this proposal for several reasons that you've heard, but primarily for the impact on the residential neighborhood. My daughter and husband moved into a house just a few years ago on Anthony Lane. Anthony Lane is perpendicular to Brookside. It's literally several hundred feet away from the proposed location. I was there today to see the kids getting off the bus. There were 15 kids getting off the bus at Anthony Lane. There were many other kids who are not school age. The reason they moved there was the neighborhood to raise their children. And most of the discussion from Nautilus and their representatives have woefully misrepresented the impact on the residential neighborhood. Their discussion is focused on just like plain zoning regulations. Yeah, we have this square foot, but they're really not getting to the crux of the harmony of the neighborhood, the nature and the impact on the surrounding area. We talked about the traffic survey, how it was selectively done, woefully incomplete. I would ask the board to ask the company to show their business plan and provide evidence as to how they're going to make a profit with the 20 to 40 customers that they said that they use for the traffic study. That is a woefully disingenuous number. This is a multi-million-dollar investment, and they're not going to make money with 20 to 40 people. So it's really, really underplaying the impact on the community. Darien Town Line, this neighborhood abuts the Darien Town Line. We in Darien have chose not to allow dispensaries so that the residents can enjoy a town without a dispensary. That was our decision. The fact that this property
Mr. you have 30 seconds.
Completely abuts the Darien Town Line has to be taken into consideration. I appreciate your time and thank you for your consideration, but we strongly oppose this.
Good, thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Patrick Casey.
Hi there, Patrick Casey from Vineyard Lane. I'm calling you from a very strange time in Abu Dhabi. Just so you know, people dial in from all over the globe because we care deeply about this city. And I mean, for me, the summary of this is that clearly there's an overwhelming public sentiment against. I feel it's my duty to remind the zoning board that they are a body that is endowed with the right to exercise discretion. The applicant often makes it seem like they do not have that right to exercise discretion, but they indeed do. More specifically, the special permit that's being applied for, the applicant conveniently lists all kind of 5 reasons or 5 things they have to hit on. So let me help you as you draft your resolution for denial such that it sticks, because Lord knows we're going to be getting sued when we say no to this thing. So let me make sure you guys deny it in the right way. So in order to approve the special permit, it needs to be proven consistent with public convenience and welfare. Okay, let's continue on item number 4 in particular. On that list talks specifically about the existing use being consistent with in not impairing future development. The applicant goes on to describe how these types of developments have helped communities. I don't think the public that directly abuts the property agrees with that conclusion. Are we really going to sit here and rely on a private equity professional who works in Massachusetts above and beyond the hundreds of applicants who have called in? You are a board that exercises discretion. If we can't sum up the sentiment around a project based on the overwhelming consensus of its abutting neighbors, what are we doing accepting the word of nameless and faceless applicants who represent private equity firms and do not have any invested interest in this community? It is completely nonsensical. Okay. And then the final thing is number 5, the master plan. This has to be in accordance with the master plan. Okay. Master plan 6A.1 very clearly states that surrounding residents and new developments have to be deemed consistent with the adjacent zones. And they have to be in line with the preservation of the character of the neighborhood. Every single neighbor that I can even think of on this map has called in to voice their dissent and concern with this property. You have every single right to draft a denial of resolution, and that denial of resolution should stand up to court. The applicant will likely, in their petulance, sue you, and I say welcome it. If they want to waste their money and the city's money to do that, that's fine. But it is your job as the voting members of the zoning board to actually listen to the public, draft the denial, draft it well, so that when we get sued, we can actually continue to say no. I will end with saying that I wrote an
Mr.
op-ed.
Paisley, you got to wrap it up, please.
I'll end by saying that I wrote an op-ed in the Connecticut Examiner entitled, "Can the zoning board say no? Or are they allowed to say no?" I really encourage you all to read it. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Natalie Alini.
Hello, my name is Natalie Alini, and I live at 22 Outlook Drive in Darien. I have been a resident of Darien for the last 14 years, and I strongly oppose this application for the cannabis dispensary, as do many others on this call. In fact, have you heard one person for this dispensary between the last board meeting and tonight? Obviously, my main concern is that the location abuts a residential zone with many young families. I'm concerned that the safety, the well-being, and privacy of these families would be negatively affected. I urge the city of Stamford to consider the master plan of the city and the recently proposed zoning language, which prohibits cannabis dispensaries adjacent to residential zones. I would also like to note that the space in question does not appear suitable to be a suitable location due to the limited parking, the surrounding flood zone, the difficulty of getting in and out of the location from the post road, all things that have been mentioned countless times by other, concerned members of the community. Listen, while I appreciate that cannabis is now legal, I believe that as a community, we really need to do our due diligence and make sure that we are not being lax when considering having a dispensary located so close to residential areas, schools, parks, beaches, the Darien YMCA, Chelsea Piers. Please, I really encourage the board, please be mindful and think of the long-term negative consequences of putting a cannabis dispensary in this location. And that's it. You know, I'm just really concerned, as are all of our other neighbors. And you have not heard one person for this. Thank you for your consideration, and I strongly encourage the board to vote no to this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next we have is Kristen Nayardi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name's Kristen Nayardi. I live at 1 Wilson Ridge Road in Darien. I led the petition efforts across our community, and it was the quickest rally cry of just under 1,000 signatures within Darien. I'm here today to express my strong opposition to the proposed dispensary at this location. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight and for all of us in our community and both communities across Stamford and Darien. First, I want to address the criteria required to granting a special permit. As outlined in our zoning regulations, your zoning regulations, the permit should only be granted if proposed use meets 5 essential criteria. As our other friends also reminded, 1, location and nature of site. The site in question is not suitable for such development. Its proximity to existing dwellings and other structures is concerning. 2, nature and intensity of the proposed use. The proposed dispensary is likely to bring about disturbances that are not in harmony with the general purpose and intent of your regulations. Increased noise, potential fumes, and increased artificial lighting and cameras are just a few of the disturbances that will negatively impact the peaceful enjoyment of nearby properties, including a Stamford Park. 3, traffic patterns and safety. The traffic study submitted by the applicant is flawed and misleading. As many people have said, it was conducted during a school break. It fails to accurately represent the typical traffic conditions. Furthermore, there have been 2 major accidents in the vicinity, ones we can hear from our home. Drag races start, the light turns green, and they go. We have speed limit signs in Darien that are not monitored with cameras, and it is a problem. The accident just this weekend had 2 cars completely totaled that were moving cars, 3 parked cars, all within 500 feet of this dispensary. 4, the impact on surrounding area. This dispensary would impair the present and future development of our community. The nature of the business is not compatible with the surrounding residential area and will likely deter potential future developments that align with our community's values and needs. 5, the consistency with the master plan, the grand master plan of Stamford, which we all have read so much about. The proposed dispensary is not in line with the city of Stamford's master plan. The master plan envisions—
Ms. Nayardi, you have 30 seconds left.
Sure. Different trajectory for our community, one that prioritizes public welfare, safety, and the harmonious development pattern. Secondly, I must highlight the applicant's misleading statements and questionable practices. At the last public hearing on May 6th, Connie claimed to have engaged with the public, but I was present at Giovanni's, and video footage can also tell, and we have timestamp marks, where questions were evaded and provided incomplete information. Furthermore, the traffic studies and timing and structural integrity assurances provided lack of necessary rigor and transparency.
You need to wrap it up, please.
Sure.
You can conclude.
Thirdly,
You
and
need to
lastly,
conclude.
I suppose,
You
I urge the
need
board
to
to question
conclude.
the realities of the floodway versus the flood zone. The site is within the floodway, and yet the application lacks comprehensive studies or reports. Relying solely on the architect's certification—
Hey, your time is up. Thank you.
Next we have Mr. Joel Green.
Good evening. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, staff. My name is Joel Green. I practice law in Bridgeport, the law offices of Grade and Gross. It's my pleasure to appear before you this evening on behalf of Chilton Financial Company and Bay Pond Holdings, who are respectively the occupant and owner of the abutting premises at 1290 East Main. And my clients are deeply concerned as a budding property owner with the impact of this project. I have to commend, first of all, I want to thank the commission for your generous patience in this process, and I'm going to move along quickly, recognizing the hour and recognizing in particular how impressed I am with the thorough job that the public has done in addressing the issues associated with this application. It is really impressive, and they've really covered the facts and covered the regulations, and I'm sure that's not lost on the commission. I had written to the commission earlier today in response to the new materials submitted by the applicant, and I have asked the commission to hold the public hearing open. It is my opinion that the applicant has really done itself a disservice. It does the board a disservice. It does the public a disservice when it's filing documents on effectively the day before an application is continued to be heard and that are posted today. And while some of it is in response to comments by departments of the city, it is evident that this application is really, the applicant has really not been forthright, has done a poor job, and it is a poorly conceived application when the applicant is submitting for the first time, for example, stormwater detention on a site that has drained directly into the Norotan River, and where the applicant intends to increase the traffic on the property by 7-fold by its own admission, adding a 73 car trip net increase during peak hours, and where there's no treatment, and the applicant introduces this as just a small change on a CAM application.
Mr. Green, you have 30 seconds.
So we urge the commission to hold the public hearing open. The public should have an opportunity to comment on the new materials, and the rules of fundamental fairness dictate that. This application really must be denied. It does not comply with your standards for special permits, and frankly, it will not withstand an appeal in the event that it were to be granted by the commission. And once again, I want to thank you for your time and for your attention in this matter.
Good. Thank you.
We have, next we have Ms. Jacqueline Tyler. I believe we've heard from her before.
Hi, good evening. Yes, it is Jacqueline Tyler. It's supposed to be my son, Owen Tyler, who was excited to speak as he turned 18 on Saturday. However, I have sent him to bed because it is 11:34.
Did you speak earlier on this?
I have not spoken today. No, I have not. But I would like to address the drainage study that was submitted on the 17th, which was submitted as stated the day before the public hearing as far as a business day. I will not take the 3 minutes. I just want to understand whether or not section 2.4, which the applicant stated that they are in compliance with, if that section allows an applicant to use another property for drainage. And if not, I would encourage the board to review that drainage because it is not located on their property. In addition, I would also ask that Mr. Morris continue to ask the questions he's been asking in regards to the floodplain and the floodway. It's specifically regarding the fact that the applicant stated at the last meeting that all of their utilities, and I repeat all, are located above the 1-foot floodplain level, when in fact their air handlers, air conditioner handlers, as well as the gas meter are all located at the rear of the building below the floodplain. So that's all I have to say. There's a lot of other misleading information the applicant has stated, which are covered in a letter that have been submitted to you. along with video footage links for the video at Giovanni's. I encourage you to go back and review those. You will see that the applicant representative also stated themselves that these should not be located near parks, when in fact it is located near a park. So the applicant themselves has stated that this is not an appropriate location for this application. Thank you. That's it. Hopefully you will keep this open for others to review the drainage, etc., and for the chance for my 18-year-old son who would like to speak as far as representing the youth. He would like to get that on record. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Last, we have phone number ending in 6485. I believe we've heard from Ms. Bell before.
Who is this?
Phone number ending in 6485, I believe, is Ms. Bell.
Is she spoke on an earlier application, right?
She did. And I believe she spoke on this one as well. Muted.
Is Pace, can you unmute? No. She is not unmuting. Okay.
And we've heard from the other speakers. We've heard from Ms. Nairadi. And
yes.
Lastly, we have Rep. Kuczynski. We heard
on
this application.
He's not.
He didn't speak on this one, yeah.
Let me.
So, yep.
Chairman,
Please identify yourself, give us your address and proceed.
All right. Next time, would you disclose your and Beverly's address? To contextualize, so it's Van Rensselaer Avenue, Stamford, Connecticut. I'm a public official, District 1 of City of Stamford. To contextualize tonight's topic and discussion, everyone's presented a lot of details, if you will. I just want to make 3 quick points within the 3 minutes. One is, it's clear to everyone here that Stamford zoning regulations require interpretation, particularly Section 19C, right? That's part of the reason why you're here, is to provide interpretation. It's not hard and fast. It's not a bright blue line in the sand. It requires interpretation. So your job is to interpret, in part. Secondly, the facts that you need to rely on to make those interpretations or to apply those interpretations are submitted by the applicant largely, but they do not rise to the level of fact or verifiable fact. Some would argue, let alone the truth, as many have tonight. Thirdly, the neighborhood, those that are most affected by this, are clearly opposed to this action, potential action. So you have a set of regulations open to interpretation. You have a set of fact or a set of information that you're supposed to rely upon or use for those interpretations. And you have a public that's opposed to it. I just call on you, Chairman Stein, and the full zoning board to exercise moral leadership, to be honest about the dubious nature of the so-called facts that are presented, and seek further confirmation or denial of their veracity. Look at assess the public's judgments as it relates to 19C, as to how they believe they will actually be impacted by it, and then make your decision based upon a complete set of information as opposed to an ideological agenda or some other agenda. I encourage you to take the high road and to delay tonight's decision and to actually take the time for Mr. Blessing and his staff to acquire the adequate information to actually make a wise decision. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Mr. Brayman, Attorney Brayman, you still awake?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Good. Would you like to respond succinctly, please, to the public's comments?
I will try. There's a lot. So
There is.
in terms of signage, there was a comment at the last hearing that there's going to be signs on I-95. Obviously, we can't have signage other than as required by law, which strictly limits us to a sign of no more than 16 inches by 18 inches. And a lot of other limitations on signs, and we agreed with the planning board's recommendation to remove the ground pole sign. We heard a lot of commentary from residents of Darien, of course, and the people of Darien are entitled to their opinions. Certainly, people who live nearby, but Darien, as one speaker noted, has made a very different decision about cannabis retail. They've decided that it should not be permitted in Darien at all. Okay, and Stamford took the opposite. That they believe, you believe that it should be regulated, that it should be limited, but that it should be allowed. Okay, so I wanted to address some of the locations that people have claimed are within close proximity to the site, and quoting the Stamford Advocate from April 22nd, 2024. Norotan Presbyterian Church is 1.2 miles away. St. Luke's Episcopal Church, 1.3 miles away. St. John's Catholic Church, 1.2 miles away. And the Darien YMCA, half a mile. Hindley School, 1.1 miles. We heard a little bit about flooding. Obviously, Mr. Morris had some questions about that, and we responded in the last hearing. As the Harbor Commission and as Environmental Protection Bureau agreed, we're making the site more resilient to flooding than existing. We're eliminating everything but storage from below the base flood elevation. We're installing flood vents. We're using flood zone compliant construction to raise all required mechanicals and HVAC above 12 feet. We're using flood resistant materials below 12 feet. We have a flood certification. We have a flood contingency plan. We're removing a structure, an existing structure that's in the floodway, which EPB noted as a positive when it was communicating with DEEP about this application. Now we have a new stormwater treatment and improved drainage system. I wanted to address the notion that we have to continue the public hearing simply to comment on the drainage plan. Engineering itself recommended that the stormwater improvements be a condition of a building permit. That is entirely consistent with Section 15D of the zoning regulations, which requires compliance with the Stamford Drainage Manual and leaves the determination of that compliance to engineering. That is something that's already delegated to engineering in the zoning regulations itself. And engineering and Land Use Bureau and Environmental Protection Bureau, this board have all had stormwater improvements as a condition of approval. The special permit, perfectly legitimate here. But here we've gone above and beyond that. We've demonstrated through record evidence that we will meet every possible requirement of the Stamford Drainage Manual and that we will improve stormwater. We're just restriping an existing parking lot here, and we're improving the stormwater drainage nonetheless. I wanted to talk about traffic. So there was no school vacation in Stamford during the time of the traffic study. There was a school vacation in Darien, but the notion that school was out in Stamford during the time we were doing the traffic study and therefore it's invalid is just not accurate. The fact that the traffic study was done in winter has nothing to do with the validity of the traffic study. Traffic Transportation Bureau, which, as you heard earlier tonight, heavily scrutinizes applications, looked very carefully at our traffic study, asked us very probing questions, and we came back to them with the information that satisfied them that the traffic study was acceptable and that our site plan was acceptable. So I think that notions that the traffic study should be thrown out. I think that that's not worthy of your time. A special permit can't be denied simply because there's an increase in traffic. That's very clear in the law. There has to be undue traffic congestion. There's Grumman Hill Montessori Association versus Planning and Zoning of Wilton is one case that held that, and then another one is Grace Community Church versus Planning and Zoning. Trying to get through a lot in a short period of time, so bear with me. I don't want to speak too fast either.
That's okay. Talk fast.
I think that it's important to remember that, as you heard at the last hearing from our traffic engineer, there's 1,000 to 1,200 cars passing by this site during peak hour already. An additional 73 cars. You can try to make it sound like a lot of cars, like it's going to increase traffic, but our traffic engineer has demonstrated that it's not going to significantly increase traffic or negatively impact traffic safety. And TTP didn't believe it was going to negatively impact traffic safety. So it's not a significant amount of incremental increase in traffic. And in fact, the existing use as a restaurant is much more intensive in terms of parking demand. 10 spaces per 1,000 square feet, as opposed to retail, which we're proposing to change it to only 4 parking spaces required per 1,000 square feet. So you're reducing that intensity in that regard. I wanted to turn it over to Connie to talk about security and the notion that there's going to be widespread consumption and loitering and going to other private property to consume cannabis, to smoke or ingest cannabis on other people's property or in parks nearby. This is a widespread problem. I wanted to have Mr. Bulver address that.
Thank you. I'll try to keep this brief as well, and I appreciate you all staying up so late to hear this. So Lenny discussed traffic. I have data from our other operations, specifically in Missouri, and I think, happy to share that with the board. Certainly happy to, upload that information. Quite frankly, I think there's a lot of fear and inflated expectations, and our data shows otherwise. And so, again, happy to share that. And then, I know there was a lot of concern about exposure to kids. And I will remind everyone from a security standpoint that we check IDs twice, right, at the door and prior to purchase. I did want to show too, I didn't do a very good job last time, but the rendering of what our dispensary will look like. So if you give me a minute, I will share my screen and just show you really quickly. Hopefully I do it correctly this time. Can everyone see my screen?
No.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, perfect. So hopefully, this bottom image, right, is basically the rendering that will be facing Brookside, the river, right? And so I understand, right, as a parent, that there might be concerns about kids, but I honestly have a hard time understanding how something that looks like this would be appealing to a kid. And even if I were to look up at the front of the store, right, which looks like this, there's no flashing lights, there's no pot symbol, there's nothing that would even make anyone think that this is a dispensary. It just, honestly, in my humble opinion, it looks like a boring, ugly building. So I will stop my sharing. There we go. And then just to Lenny's points about loitering and consumption, I mean, I will reiterate once again, at least for loitering, our security, it is required by the state. It's not because our business is dangerous. It's something that we require to do. And so we'll have the surveillance during business hours, and then it will be monitored actively after business hours. In terms of loitering, we talked about that. I'm happy to address any questions the board has, but we do we will have this in our standard operating procedures where we have security patrols regularly checking right before we open, certainly after we close, and then during business hours, checking for loitering or any other issues. And finally, on consumption, I will again state it is against the law to consume on premises or anywhere nearby. And we will do whatever is necessary to ensure that this does not happen. And I can say with confidence that in our operations in 7 other states, we have never had an issue with consumption. I'm sure the opponents will debate that, and I can offer as much proof as possible, but there are specific rules and laws for where this can be consumed. And I think it's very difficult to tie someone who's actually consuming versus someone who bought our product and walked across the street to consume. I mean, a lot of customers are coming in a car. So again, it's very difficult for me to envision a scenario where that person doesn't get into their car after making a purchase and decides to walk across the street to Gurley Park or to Giovanni's to consume. That is just not a behavior we have seen from any of our other operations. And I will just finally cite the Stamford Advocate article, which was, I believe, last week. You know, there were concerns, I think, from Curaleaf and maybe Fine Fettle that there was consumption within the parking lot. Yet there were no calls to the Stamford police. There's no calls to the mayor's office about loitering or consumption. So again, this leads me to believe that this is more fear or inflated expectations and not reality. I mean, we preach safe, regulated product, safely consumed, safe and responsible consumption at home. Thank you for your time.
And I'd like to say that what we will submit for the record, the Stamford Advocate article that Mr. Bova referenced, which was from yesterday, which noted no complaints to the police, no complaints through Fix-It, and we're not aware of any complaints to zoning staff about loitering or consumption. We'll email that for the record now. And does the board have any questions?
Does not appear so. But it.
Have we thoroughly exhausted you at this point?
I was unmuted.
Bill has questions.
Yeah,
I was unmuted. Real quick. We heard from a bunch of the neighbors the concern regarding because of the width of the driveway and cars going up and down and people having to walk up the driveway, it would be dangerous. Can you comment on that, please?
Yes. So I'm glad you asked. So a couple of things. First of all, obviously it's a lawful non-conforming driveway. It's only a little bit smaller than the minimum 20 feet. It's for a short stretch, about a car length and a half. And then it widens to well over the minimum 20 feet. There's a short portion of the drive aisle, and I will share my screen if I can. So there's this short portion of the drive aisle, right? Which is, slightly narrower for a small bit of the stretch of it. And this has been two-way for, many, many years, presumably since 1959. TTP and engineering and land use bureau, nobody noted any safety concerns with the width. However, if the zoning board has any concerns, there is a very simple fix that we have discussed just now that we're perfectly willing to implement. There is already an entrance, or what we've termed an egress vestibule here, that can be accessed from the parking lot without any exterior changes whatsoever. With simply a little interior reconfiguration, we can make this into the ingress, and then people will come into the facility through here, from the parking lot if they wish. They can still come in the front from the ADA parking space in front. And then all we would have to do is purely interior fit out to switch out the secure vestibule so that we could use the same stairwell for ingress and egress, and then you would completely eliminate that problem, if it even is a problem, right? So that's an option, and that could be a condition of approval, that we make this existing egress into an ingress as well. So that's an option for the zoning board if you have any concerns. But this obviously hasn't had any negative impact on the restaurant that's been operating for many decades, and for which we have a lower parking demand, right? So a restaurant has much higher intensity of parking, people coming in and out, and we are going to have a lower parking demand. We're also not significantly increasing the traffic. But if there's any concern, this can obviously be addressed in that very simple way without any exterior changes whatsoever. And I'm sure my design team will correct me, but if there's any issue. But I think that's the way to answer your question. If I have, Mr. Morris.
Yes. Now that lower area where it says express vestibule, I believe that's what it says.
Yeah, egress vestibule.
Egress. Okay, I thought it said express. It was
Yeah.
very small print this late at night.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that would be for entrance and exit, or just for entrance?
Entrance and exit, and then you would have,
okay.
Yeah, so you would just have the secure vestibule would be up here, and you would make sure that people can get in securely and that they could also exit securely.
Interesting. Okay.
But I think it's also important to note that if you look at the drive aisle width, so some other data points to consider: standard car width is only 7 feet, and standard parking space is 9 feet wide, right? So if you have 18 feet, then you have enough space for 2 cars.
Yeah, unless both cars are coming in, leaving at the same time, and you're trying to walk up there.
Yeah, so that's why we're proposing this. The entrance be here, and then that would completely eliminate that issue. Just wanted to see if there's anything else that I've missed.
Bill, hold on. Bill, did you have any other questions?
No.
Okay. Was there someone else who had a question? Okay. Lenny, keep going.
Well, look, I don't want to be labeled the special permit criteria because you heard a lot about them already. But
we know what they are.
You know them very well, and I think that the record amply demonstrates that we've met every last one of them. Obviously, the staff report made very clear that we meet all the requirements in Section 5E for cannabis dispensary. We've met all the requirements of CAM as set forth in our CAM report and as EPB agreed. And I would humbly respect that the zoning board, you've been very patient, you've been very thorough. I would ask that you approve these applications for special permit and for CAM.
Okay, we had 2 more people who had called in who had wanted to speak. So let's let them speak. Vanita, can you put them on, please?
Yes, we have Miss Kristen Nairati.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. My name is Demi Ferraris. I live at 6 Woodland Drive in Darien, Connecticut. And I am strongly opposed to this proposed dispensary. First of all, I think it's been clearly established that this dispensary is within a very close proximity of a residential neighborhood. So safety is my biggest concern. With result to being the proximity of the neighborhood. Data shows that while under the influence of marijuana, people show the same lack of coordination as a standard intoxicated driver test do. As much people. But the more difficult and more unpredictable the test, the more likely that marijuana will impair their performance. My concern is, given the proximity to a residential neighborhood where children are out on their bikes. They're playing, mothers in strollers. That people are consuming at the dispensary and then getting behind the wheel on the post road, where there's an abundance of foot traffic. Something else I want to mention is that marijuana is currently a growing risk in the public in the United States, following a public opinion that it has an extreme risk to health. The American Psychiatric Association has reported that there's clear evidence that there's an association with the onset of a psychiatric disorder with the use of marijuana. So my concern is, in the event of a person consuming within the vicinity of the dispensary, that a psychiatric episode could occur, while there is children that are in close proximity to the dispensary. So I'm extremely concerned about the location of the dispensary and relevant to the neighborhood. The other thing I want to mention is that there is an increased violence directed toward dispensary owners and employees. That's a huge concern that would be happening so close to a residential neighborhood. There also is an increase in burglaries at marijuana dispensaries. There's an increase in loitering, noises, litter, and property damage in the area around the dispensaries. There's increase in offenses involving driving while under the influence of marijuana. And additionally, there's a increase in sales of marijuana to juveniles under the age of 18 to customers who present themselves as legal to purchase the cannabis. So safety is something I'm extremely concerned about and something that should not be taken lightly. And then I would like to request that there's a continuum of the conversation, given the fact that the applicant submitted his application today, so we didn't get a chance as a community to review the application. So I would hope that you would consider keeping the application open so that we can take a look at it and review it and have more public comment.
Okay, thank you. Who's next?
Yeah, we have the phone number 648, ending in 6485.
6485. Is that,
No, I didn't.
is that Ms. Pace? Is that
Yes.
you?
I'm going to use my married name because I was a federal agent for 27 years with the Defense Department / Defense and Security Service. And in my office, we were a special group. We had a DEA agent, we had criminal IRS agents, we had Secret Service agents, CBP, Custom Border Patrol, and ICE. And this dispensary is absolutely ridiculous. First of all, Stamford should have never approved so many dispensaries. They should stop it immediately. This is a gateway drug to other more serious drugs. They cause a lot of problems. This dispensary is too close to I-95 north and south, and there's going to be big traffic problems. We have them already. All the zoning board and planning board has approved all these apartments. Have you gone down? I have, during the day and early evening, and seen the traffic on 95. It's time for you people to do site visits because you're only looking at paperwork. I feel for the people next to this dispensary. Children are curious, things are left on the ground, and this is unacceptable. And as a resident of Stamford for over 30 years, this is absolutely outrageous. The zoning board and planning board should stop all these dispensaries immediately. Where I live, there is one down the street on Viaduct, and yes, there is criminal activity. Cars have been broken into, windows have been broken. It's a mess. So please don't say how wonderful everything is, because it's not. And as a resident for over 34 years, this is disgraceful, horrific, and unacceptable. And again, where is the basic common sense? I don't care what a building looks like. Kids are curious. Don't tell me they aren't. I worked with different groups for many years. Children are curious. We are hurting our future young people. And I agree wholeheartedly with the Darien residents. This should be kept open, and the traffic
30
study
seconds.
should be done better. I don't care if Stamford was closed. It should be opened on both Darien and Stamford, a 24-hour traffic study, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Outrageous. And this zoning board should be ashamed of themselves if they approve any more of these dispensaries. They are harmful. Look, just for example, do any of you look at the news? Do any of you listen to any of the doctors who talk about marijuana, how it's causing cancer, heart problems, anxiety, etc.?
Miss Bell, your time,
what are you trying
your time
to do
is
here?
up. Your
Okay,
time is
fine.
up. But
Yeah, but it's
thank
time
you.
to think about the residents. Thank you.
David, we also have Miss Jennifer Hand.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
we
Yes.
can.
Hi, I'm
Please.
Jennifer Hant. I live at 2658 Post Road in Darien, very near the boatyard location. I oppose the Nautilus application primarily for traffic and safety. In May alone, I have twice heard the sickening sound of screeching brakes and colliding metal outside my home, followed by first responders lined up on Post Road. The accident last Friday, May 17th, also affected several cars parked in driveways. I understand that the drivers were drag racing starting at the boatyard property, a reminder of the reckless behavior that can and does happen. This was the second of 2 recent accidents on weekend evenings. The applicant wants to add a retail dispensary to this equation. With the height of traffic on weekends, an additional 73 trips per hour. How much more evidence do we need than these recent accidents to demonstrate what a terrible idea this is? The traffic study performed in the middle of the week on winter break does not reflect the impact of elevated traffic in normal conditions, never mind peak summer. The applicant's flimsy May 6th explanations about video date stamps did not address this concern. In fact, the applicant, who is represented here by an outside investor, Merida Capital, has made many misleading statements. The application was submitted in March by 1308 East Main Street LLC. That LLC was dissolved last September and not reinstated until April, rendering a March application in that business name null. The applicant also submitted photos showing a buffer to adjoining residents that only exists in summer. Since the application was submitted in March, the use of backdated photos showing greenery was clearly intentional. Is this the kind of deception we want from a community business? Regarding safety, a new study found that properties near dispensaries saw significantly higher rates of property crime. Surely the city of Stamford cannot believe that this corner where our towns come together on the water is best served by a dispensary, nor would your Stamford master plan prioritize one. This application is clearly objectionable to nearby properties and would unduly harm residents' right to peaceful enjoyment, all wording from your own regulations. A dispensary in this location is just bad judgment. It's clear Stamford must be responsible stewards and abide by your guidelines. This is a solvable problem, and the zoning board can do the right thing. Compel Merida Capital and Nautilus to find a new location away from our communities. I also request that the hearing be kept open to consider the new information provided at the last minute today. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Benita, do we have any other speakers?
No, we don't.
Okay, since, well, board members, any final questions?
No, Mr. Chairman.
No.
Okay, Attorney Brayman, do you feel a need to respond to the speakers we heard?
Only if the board feels that it require a response from me or from Mr. Bover about anything that was raised after we last spoke.
Anyone from the board want to hear from Attorney Brayman responding to the speakers? Okay. Apparently not. You've said, Attorney Brayman, you said what you want to say?
Yes.
Okay. Board, any objection to closing this application?
No.
Good.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman. Make sure though that they're allowed to submit the additional information that we talked about tonight.
Yeah.
That the applicant is.
Correct.
Yes. Do you want to mention what that is, just so there's no question
Well,
about it?
they're going to have new exit entry, which they're going to use.
Yep.
Well, that can also. Yes.
We're happy to submit that in between now and your decision for your review. And that can be done quickly, and it can be a condition of approval.
Yeah, and also there was some slides or videos, I can't remember, it was so long ago, that they talked about submitting, but I can't remember what they were.
We submitted the slides from the last presentation from the May 6th hearing.
No, there's some new information which we just heard tonight. It was
The drainage? The traffic data from other states that we have, the transaction data, those slides.
Well, you said you were going to submit it, but I can't remember what it was.
Oh,
Yeah, the transaction data from other states.
Yeah, we can submit that. Yeah. I forgot Mr. Boger mentioned that during the hearing. We can certainly submit that, and we'll submit also the Stamford Advocate article from yesterday.
You should also submit the new slide you presented tonight.
Which one was that?
With the greenery in
That's already in the record. That was already on the public
received
website.
Oh,
we
yeah.
got that last week, Roseanne.
We did.
Yeah. Okay, so then application 224-16 is closed, except that it's left open to receive the materials that we've just enumerated. Board, there are a couple of more things we have to do. The next one is application 227-04, City of Stamford Zoning Board text change. This application proposes to bring the ongoing reorganization of the zoning regulations to a conclusion by consolidating and reordering zoning sections. Cross-references across sections will be updated with the new section numbers. Placeholders will be added for districts without standalone sections, and the table of contents will be updated to reflect these changes. This one's also going to be continued, but we need to open it. So, Roseanne, do you have the planning board letter for this?
Hold on. All right. Shuffle off papers around. Okay. 224-07, right?
Yes.
Let me make sure I didn't grab the wrong one. March 14th, did you open it?
I'm sorry?
Did you open it?
Yeah, I read the
Okay.
the whatever.
March 14th, 2024 to Mr. David Stein, Chair, Zoning Board, regarding ZB application 224-07, text change. Dear Mr. Stein and members of the Zoning Board, during its regularly scheduled meeting held on Tuesday, March 12th, 2024, The planning board reviewed the above captioned application referred in accordance with the requirements of the Stamford Charter. Applicant proposes to bring the ongoing reorganization of the zoning regulations to a conclusion by consolidating and reordering zoning sections. Cross-references across sections will be updated with the new section numbers. Placeholders will be added for districts without standalone sections, and the table of contents will be updated to reflect these changes. Benita Matur, principal planner, made a presentation and answered questions from the board. After considerable discussion, the planning board unanimously voted to recommend approval of ZB application 224-07 and found this request to be in general harmony with the 2015 master plan. Sincerely, Stamford Planning Board, Teresa Del Chair.
Thank you. We're going to continue application 224-07 until our next meeting on June 10th, 6:30 on Zoom. Benita, that works for the next meeting?
Yes.
We don't
one
want
that
to do
didn't
the
have that-
presentation tonight?
Anyone who wants can stick around for that. Okay. Minutes. May 6 minutes. Any comments, changes?
None. Mr. Chairman.
No?
Nothing.
We get a motion.
Make the motion.
Second.
Okay, we have motion to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, they're approved unanimously. Next, we have the minutes of May 9th, 2024. This was the site visit. All of us were there. Any changes to these minutes? Can we get a motion to approve them, please?
So moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Approved 5-0. Good. Next, we have CSPR 1185. Jeff Sibilio, 29 Waterbury Avenue. Applicant is proposing the construction of a second and third floor to the existing single-family dwelling. Property is located in the CAM boundary. Benita, anything special about this that we should know?
No, I mean, it was actually on an agenda before, and the reason we tabled it was because they hadn't shown the parking on the site plan, and also we weren't sure of whether the third story was a half story or not. They've clarified what the habitable space is, and it is a third of the space underneath. So it now meets the standard, no regulation.
Okay. Are there any questions on this application?
And the parking's adequate?
Yes, they have two spaces for each of the units.
What are the are there conditions from different departments?
Yes. Give me 1 minute. The referral letters. The harbor management was January 2nd. DEP had a December 14th letter. EPB gave their comments on December 5th of last year. And engineering gave their comments on December 18th.
Okay. Can we get a motion to approve subject to the comments that we received from each of those departments?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Approved 5-0. Next, we have I up CSPR 1192 Byron Yanes, 20 Chesterfield Road, proposing a second-story car attached garage, small addition and interior renovations. Property is located in the CAM boundary. We need anything we need to know about this one?
No, it's subject to CAM review because the floor area is increasing by more than 25%. We have recommendation of approval from EPB dated April 4th and the engineering letter dated April 19th.
Okay. Any questions or discussion on this? Can we get a motion to approve subject to the conditions in the comment letters?
Make a motion. I'll make a motion.
Mentioned by Benita. Sorry, go ahead.
Make a motion.
Second.
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
All third.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approved 5-0. Cruising right along. CSPR 1195 Alexandra Harris, 40 Ocean Drive East, proposing a partial 2.5-story addition and a second-story addition over the existing footprint. Property is located in the CAM boundary. Anita's.
Yeah.
Anything you need to know about this?
No, it is, similar to some of the other applications that we've seen of addition of the existing footprint. It also has a 2.5-story level, but it's compliant with our regulations. The letter from EPB dated April 24th finds it consistent with the CAM regulations and has conditions. Then the letter from engineering dated April 23rd also found that the site plan is consistent with engineering policies and the stormwater management standards.
Are those the only letters we got?
We got the deep comments as well. Those were dated March 15th of this year.
Okay. Board, any questions or discussions on this?
No.
No? Okay, can we get a motion to approve subject to the comment letters listed by Benita?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Approved 5-0. Okay. Next is 22407, which we have continued. Application 223-38, which is 800 Long Ridge, is continued. Application 224-06, which is senior housing. I suggest we put that off till next meeting.
I agree.
Agree.
Agreed.
Okay. Next is application 224-16, which is Nautilus. That needs to wait for the next meeting till we get the items in that we requested. Next is application 223-46, Butter Cannabis. We, as you know, the feeling of the board, well, the board had not decided where it was on this. Can we get a sense of the board if we're in favor of this application or opposed to it? Bill, where are you on this one?
Well, I went over everything, all the stuff which Vanita submitted, but I still haven't changed my opinion on this. We've not heard from the Boys and Girls Club on this particular application, and so I find it hard, in my mind anyway, to deny an application because we found it to be a school when the person we're trying to protect did not testify during the. So I can't I can't, in good conscience, vote that this is considered to be a school since I did not hear from them. I just can't do it.
Okay. Roseanne?
I have to tell you, I was leaning against it, but I'm partially in agreement with Bill that we didn't hear from them, so I don't feel that they could be that against it. But I have
Against it at all.
leaning against voting for it. But I am shocked that we still haven't heard from, that we never heard from.
Yeah. Yeah, we couldn't after we closed it.
Right.
So you are somewhere between.
I'm somewhere
Ford-
between a rock and a hard place.
Okay. Jerry, what do you think?
I'm actually with the rest of the board members. It's stark that we haven't heard from the Yearwood Center and or Boys and Girls Club, and or Covenant House. So, I really don't, I was going to use that premise of if it was going to be a school, and we haven't heard anything from them. And I know we closed it. So, I'm really, as Rose said, rock and a hard place on them.
Raquel?
I'm asking if staff can just give a reminder, not a succinct reminder about the distance that a dispensary can be from an existing smoke shop. What's that, 3,000? Not 3,000 feet?
The distance from another dispensary.
No, yeah,
It's 1,000
it's from a
feet.
dispensary. It's not from a smoke shop.
Yeah.
It's 1,000 feet from a school.
Yeah.
We don't have anything in our regulations about a smoke shop being in the same area as a dispensary.
No.
No.
The distances are between like smoke shops and dispensaries and dispensaries. And schools.
I'm looking at regulations, 5 use regulations on the smoke shop tobacco store. Which page is this? 5-54. It says no smoke shop or tobacco store shall be located within 3,000 feet radius of any other such store, any medical marijuana dispensary, adult use cannabis retailer or hybrid retailer, or within 1,000 feet of a public or non-public school. So that's just specific to a smoke shop, but a smoke shop exists in that area already. So I'm asking if a marijuana dispensary can be in the reverse.
Yes,
I don't believe so. Ralph?
What does the
work
regulation
that way?
say, Mr. Chairman?
I think that's a restriction on smoke shops opening. Not on dispensaries.
Yes, it applies to dispensaries, to smoke shops, but not to dispensaries.
What?
So it says no adult use cannabis retailers shall be located within 3,000 feet radius of any other dispensary or within 1,000 feet of public or non-public schools. So it doesn't mention the smoke shops, so therefore that distance requirement doesn't apply. The other way around it does for smoke shops.
We could change it in the future if we wanted to, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the issue really that we have is we have a proliferation of smoke shops. So the goal was to regulate them. I mean, the general issue that we have is that all the smoke shops we have are grandfathered in, but obviously we want to make it as difficult as possible for new smoke shops to locate.
Okay, let's stick with this one. I can understand both sides of this. I believe that we should be rejecting it, but I certainly understand people who feel that that there really hasn't been enough presented to reject it. I know Benita received information from the applicant, I'm sorry, from Boys and Girls Club about their activities. And although they didn't show up, I do think we have that information. But you know, I certainly understand the other side. So, folks, we don't have to do this tonight, but we do have to vote on this, one way or the other. So,
As you said last time, Mr. Chair, I believe you stated that we're going to get a recommendation from staff for denial and for approval.
I
Okay.
do have a draft resolution of approval, so.
You do? Okay, I didn't see that. I
Well,
probably
that
got
came
that
in
other
an
email
email.
file that
Oh.
I can't find.
yeah, one of the many. I mean, look, we can vote on this tonight and either approve or deny it. Maybe it makes sense. You know, it's been with us now for a while.
No.
So look, how about this? I'm going to make a motion that we deny this application based on the fact that Boys and Girls Club is a school. So there's something out there. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. I think we've, do we want to have any further discussion on this?
Before we go any further here, and I may be 100% wrong about this, but Jerry, didn't you state that you were not going to take part in this application? Or is that am I thinking it wrong?
No.
It's late, so who's the presenter? Thank you, Bill. Who is the
Actually,
Oh,
you were
yes,
right,
Joe
Bill.
Capalbo, yes.
Yeah.
Let's joke about it, so you shouldn't.
I have to
Right.
recuse. Thank you, Bill, for the catch. Yeah, I have to recuse myself. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So it's
Sorry.
four of us.
I'm the oldest one here. What's going on? Anyway. Oh, God.
You're probably taking some of the jellyfish
It's only
stuff.
12:33 a.m.
Yeah. Look, if there's no second, then the motion fails. But
No, I'll second. I think everything should be seconded
okay.
and discussed.
Good. Is there any further discussion on this, or we said everything there is to say now?
I don't think we could hear anything else that would.
And I guess it would be my motion to deny it would be based on the resolutions that many of those were sent around, right?
I sent the denial resolution, the approval
Okay.
resolution. I hadn't sent yet.
Yeah, so based on the denial resolution, this is a school. Do we vote on it? Who's in favor of denying it?
Aye.
Sorry?
Aye. Favor of
Okay.
denial.
So we have a 2-2 vote. The denial motion fails. Is there someone want to put out a motion to approve?
Well, I would put out a motion to approve, but we have not seen the staff, but I'll make that motion if you like. Yes. I don't think it's going anywhere, so we might as well just move it.
Yeah. Okay.
David, do you want me to put up the
Well, wait
resolution?
until we,
Let's see.
it would be based on the conditions that you would put up and we would discuss. Is there?
This would occur much earlier in the evening. Anyway.
Yeah. Is there any further discussion? Okay. It got a second, right?
Oh, second.
All in favor of approving the application, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No.
Aye.
Aye what?
I oppose.
You oppose, okay.
Killing me. You're killing me.
Okay, so we have an application here that cannot get a majority vote. We will, I believe that means that it's not, it can't be approved. Although I'm not sure what happens with the resolutions that go along with it. Ralph, Benita, can you just double check with legal and see what our next step is?
Yes, we will bring it up with legal.
Okay, good. Almost done, guys. We have an application 222-37 TR Broad 2 LLC 122-124 Broad Street. This is the building that would be built across from the movie theater, I guess, over the entrance to the parking lot, right? Anyway, they requested an extension of time to a 1-year extension to 5/18/25. Any discussion on this?
No.
No discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Get a motion to
I move to grant a 1-year extension until May 25th, was it?
July 25th.
July 25th.
Oh,
no.
no, that's the next one. Sorry.
May 18th.
Yeah, Ralph and Benita, it was approved on May 18th. The certificate had a later date, but we would use the approval date, right?
It would be from the effective date.
From the effective date? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that would be June 2nd. So then it would be an extension to June 2nd, 2025.
So moved.
There's second. Okay, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, it's approved 5-0. Next is the Landmark 3 building project application 223-12 Landmark Square. Extension of time on the building 3 redevelopment.
Till July 25th, 2025.
Yes. Can we get a motion on that one?
So moved.
Second. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Bill, was that an aye?
Yes, it was.
Okay, Raquel, did you,
Oh, I'm sorry. Aye, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman.
Okay, it's approved 5-0. Now, the last thing we have is application 224-13, which is a zoning board application proposing changes to the BMR regulations. This one got filed, and then it's undergone some significant changes, which means it needs to get refiled. So really, what I'm looking for is a vote to withdraw it so that we can refile it in its current form.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay.
I have a quick question, Mr. Chairman. If it's gonna be withdrawn, then how long before it comes back to us? Just a guesstimate.
Ralph?
We will refile it this week. So there's a 35-day referral period, so it would take at least the 35 days.
Okay.
Filing
So
date.
another month and a half, probably. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go to planning and then get the departmental comments. Okay. That's it.
Thank God.
I think this may be a record. Everybody, thank you very much for spending the time tonight.
Thank you, fearless leader.
Thank you.
Fearless chairman.
So the next meeting is on June 10th. We have
No.
several items that have been pushed to the 10th, and plus whatever was on the 10th as well. So, but I
Mr.
don't think
Chairman.
it's late as this. Yes, Raquel.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll just make a special request if the board can consider. If we have any more cannabis or applications that come up before us, can we just pay closely to the length of the agenda, please?
Yeah, I think we need a separate meeting just to do our cannabis applications.
Right, there's no other pending cannabis dispensary.
Oh.
No hearing. There's a pending
Not
right now.
application, but
no other hearing.
yeah.
They're pending decision.
We've closed, right? Everything's been closed, but I think that's Raquel and Roseanne, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Putting it on a separate date is good. Okay, guys.
Like starting
All
at
right, thank you.
starting at like 12 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right. That is an option.
Yeah. Okay. Can we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good morning. Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.